Whitey Herzog in Kansas City from 1975 until 1979. George, we sincerely appreciate you hopping on with us today. Unfortunate circumstances, but we do appreciate the time. When you hear the name Whitey Herzog, the first thing that comes to mind for you is what, George?
Oh, the first thing that comes in mind was, let me see, one word or anything I want to say?
Anything you want to say, man. You can take this in any direction.
I would say it was the first time that I think a manager in the big leagues gave me confidence. His first day when he came over, the first thing he said to me, and I played against him a little bit, but the first thing he said to me is, George, you're hitting third and playing third every day as long as I'm freaking managing this club. Well, what does that do when you're 22, 23 years old? It gives you a lot of confidence. And prior to that, I was hitting, kind of anywhere up and down in the lineup. But when he came over, it was just, I have all the confidence in the world in you. And as a result, that gave me confidence to go out there and play and not worry if I went 0 for 4 and not worry if I made it there because the manager had trusted me. And he got me in an early age, and I wish I had a chance to play for him longer. He had a little run-in with ownership here in Kansas City, but still to this day, one of my best friends, and he is going to be missed. I look forward to seeing him every year in Cooperstown.
George, how fast did you see the impact of Whitey's managing style impact that Royals team?
When he came over, I believe it was 74. He came over, and we had a good nucleus, but in our division, we had the Oakland A's who won the World Series in 72, 73, and 74. I think those were the years. And the last 75, I think we had a pretty good run. 76, we finally beat the A's. So I think, they won in 73, 74, 75, and then we beat them. And, the Oakland A's had Reggie, they had Catfish, they had Sal Bando, Joe Rudy, they had all those guys, and we had a bunch of young guys, basically. It was myself and Freddie Patek had been around. Frank White was just coming up. John Mayberry, and we had Al Cowens in the outfield, and, just a lot of guys that no one had ever heard of before. But he was a great tactician of the game, and he just gave us confidence to go out there and play. And if you screwed up, you screwed up, but don't let it bother you, your next at-bat, or don't take your at-bat to the field. And he just exuded a lot of confidence in us. And for us to beat the Oakland A's in 76 and then go to the bottom of the ninth inning of the last game of the playoffs against the Yankees, and then do the same thing the next year, go to the last game against the Yankees. And we were just a bunch of homegrown guys, a bunch of guys that maybe acquired through trade. I mean, I would love to see how good we would have been if our owner, Ewan Kaufman, would have ever tested the free agent market, because the Yankees would always go out and get that guy to put them over the level, their current level, and we never did that. We just kind of did everything through minor leagues, and if we could have done that, I mean, he could have managed in Kansas City for 20 years probably.
We're talking to George Brett, Baseball Hall of Famer here on 101 ESPN. The news here in St. Louis, Whitey Herzog passed away this morning. I do want to ask, George, just from a friendship perspective, right, away from the field, what was your relationship like with Whitey as you got later on in not just your baseball career, but now? What's your relationship like with Whitey Herzog off of the field?
Well, he and I always had a special relationship. I got a call from his daughter Debbie, a couple days ago saying Whitey was in the hospital. I FaceTimed with him, 3 days ago. Then that night she said they were taking him into a hospice where he could get better care. I had a message this morning that he passed away last night at 10:15. I called her up, talked to her for a while, and she was over with Mary Lou, Whitey's wife. I talked to Mary Lou for about 10 minutes, but I was always very, very close to Whitey. He would always have me over for dinner in the off season. Once in a while, invite me over for lunch prior to a game during the off season. I mean, he knew, he has so many friends because he's such a great storyteller and was such a good guy. If you go bass fishing or crappie fishing or bluegill fishing, he had the best lake within 30 miles of the stadium. If you wanted to go quail hunting, pheasant hunting, chukar hunting, I mean, he knew everybody that had a farm, that had access to all the things that he liked to do. And man, I remember, I'll never forget the first time I went quail hunting, and we were walking along, and all of a sudden his dog Bandit goes on point, and he's going, okay, George, get over there, get over there, get over there. And sure enough, man, the dog jumps in this little thicket. And I don't know if you've ever gone quail hunting, but the noise a covey of quail makes when it comes out of the thicket, it's amazing. And I dove on the ground. It scared the hell out of me, and he fired 3 times and got 3 birds. But by the end of that winter, I was a pretty good hunter. But I think every time I went quail hunting, I went with Whitey. Every time I went fishing, I went with Whitey. And then we would play golf together in the off season and stuff. So, you know, my friendship was a little different than I think a lot of other guys that played for him over the years, because, you know, he kind of took me under his wing. He came over in 24. I was 21, 22 years old, and hadn't had a lot of major league experience, and so he was like my kind of father that I really never had in Major League Baseball.
I think the part for me, George, that I love most about Whitey, and you'll be able to speak to this, is I got to see him in the press box all of the time, sitting in the broadcast booth with Mike Shannon and John Rooney and Mike Claiborne, and it didn't matter who you were, whether you were a broadcaster or a player or if you were just some intern walking around. He would sit there, he would ask questions about you, but he would sit and talk baseball with you, and the guy loved ball so much that he could go on for a 45-minute to an hour conversation about one topic and never stop.
Yeah, I mean, he really respected the game of baseball, and his memory was, I mean, unbelievable. Sitting around and having Hank Bauer, the old Yankee great, Al Z, our old equipment manager, who was my equipment manager and a great friend of Whitey's, to sit around with them and have them tell stories. And it would, you know, stories would go like this. Hey, you remember that day back in 1949 in Gastonia? And that guy, and Whitey would say, oh, yeah, Jimmy Jones. Yeah, God, the switch hitter from Mobile, Alabama. You know, and you're going, oh, my God. But, you know, he was a good talker, but even more so, he was a good listener. And he always made people feel important.
George, do you have a favorite Whitey Herzog story from your time playing for him?
Yeah, you know, I mentioned this to him the other day on the phone, and then Debbie, his daughter, told me to tell Mary Lou this on the phone this morning when I spoke with her. When Whitey came over, you know, we started playing good, and, you know, Whitey used to have a flat top, and then all of a sudden he'd let his hair grow down, and his hair would kind of just fall straight, you know, straight down like – you know, like Larry, like Moe on the Three Stooges. and so we started calling him Stein one day because he looked like Frankenstein. And so all of a sudden, you know, we're winning, and he's happy. He's joking around with all the players and stuff. And he goes, I know why you son of a guns are calling me Stein. It's because I managed like Einstein. And we all said, no, it's because you look like Frankenstein with that frickin' haircut, Whitey. And he came in the next day, he had a flat top.
So you guys influenced the way a hairstyle was for the manager. That's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, George, the one that I am curious about is what 1985 was like for you, because, of course, you mentioned how impactful Whitey was for you in your career with Kansas City, and then that World Series where it was against the Cardinals with Whitey and you on Kansas City side winning that.
Well, I was really pulling for them because I would love to have the opportunity to play against them at that time of my career. And I'll never forget before game one, you know how that's a big media day, and I think it was the practices and I saw him, and we went over and shook hands and gave you. I think this was long before the hugs. You know, we weren't doing hugs back then, but it was a handshake. Hey, how's your family? All that stuff. Boy, this is going to be a fun week. Good luck to you. Stuff like that. Well, it's 3-3, and we're going in Sunday morning. We have Game 7, and I couldn't sleep. I don't know if Whitey couldn't sleep, but, man, I swear to God, I went to bed about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and woke up. It was 20 minutes later. I went back to sleep, woke up 10 minutes later, and I couldn't sleep. So I get up, and a friend of mine was the head coach of the Chiefs, John Makovic, back then. So I called John and I said, "Hey, John, I can't sleep. I want to get my mind off Game 7. Is there any way I could come?" Because they had a day game, and Game 7 was Sunday night. He says, "Sure, I'll save you a seat. Just go to the ticket office. The ticket, they know who you are, and go up and sit in my suite." So I go in there with one of my brothers who came in for the series, and we walk into the suite, and this is the honest to God truth. Whitey Herzog's in there. And so I sat with Whitey before Game 7 of the World Series. Very little baseball was spoken. We're just watching the Chiefs. And then about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he says, "Come on, George, we got a game to play." And we walked under the tunnel. There's a tunnel between the two stadiums in Kansas City. And we walked through the tunnel, and we went down a flight of stairs. And we got off the stairs. He turned left. I turned right. And I said, "Good luck." He said, "Good luck." And that was it. And then Game 7. But it was kind of ironic for me to be sitting next to Whitey the whole game before our 7th game of the World Series.
That's amazing. That's quite the story. George, final question that I've got for you. When you think about Whitey Herzog, Whitey ball is the first thing that comes to mind, right? It's that speed, it's the defense, it's a very specific brand of baseball that his teams played, and he did not waver from that. Here in St. Louis, when they started playing a different style, he said, "I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore because I'm not managing a team that will not play the way that I want to see them play baseball." What was that like to have a manager like that?
Yeah, well, when he came to Kansas City, Kansas City was like St. Louis. It was a big ballpark. It was AstroTurf. He needed speed, and so we built our team around speed. We weren't a home run hitting team until we went on the road. So we stole bases. I think when I was playing probably 2 or 3 years, Whitey was manager. We had 7 guys that could steal whenever they wanted to. But if you got thrown out at a bad time of the game, he might take that privilege away from you. Me and Hal McRae could put on the hit and run whenever we wanted. I had a sign with him if he was on first, and he was hitting behind me, and I was on first, he would have a sign for me. And as long as you played aggressively and you played aggressively at the right time. He didn't want to steal on bases when we're down 4 runs. We needed to get something going. And so we had a lot of speed, AstroTurf, and big fences. When he went over to St. Louis, what did they have? They had big field, they had AstroTurf, and they had to have speed. They had to have speed, and he put together that team. I don't know what trades he made or whatever to acquire that stuff. But that team they were fun to watch. And that's something like right now, Whitey Herzog couldn't manage in this game. He couldn't manage. And I don't think a lot of those old guys could manage in today's game where everybody sits around and waits for a 3-run home run. But he was sure fun to play for. And as an opponent playing against him in the 85 World Series, the only time I really played against him after he left Kansas City, I mean, it was tough. You had to be on your toes when you're playing against a guy like that. He was very well prepared going into every game.
George Brett is a fellow Baseball Hall of Famer with Whitey Herzog, played for Whitey in Kansas City from 75 to 79. George, we sincerely appreciate you taking a little bit of time. I know this is a tough day for a lot of people, yourself included, so we appreciate you sharing some memories of your time with Whitey Herzog. We hopefully will be able to catch up with you again very soon.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, George.
Got it. That's George Brett, Baseball Hall of Famer. Appreciate him joining us here on 101 ESPN. Again, news of the day is that Whitey Herzog here in St. Louis has passed away at the age of 92. Want to talk a little bit more about that. We'll get some of our reactions to our conversation with George Brett. Want to hear from you as well. 314-399-9646. And we have the mic drop feature. It is open. If you guys have any Whitey stories that you would like to share, feel free to do so today on the mic drop feature on the 101 ESPN app. We'll get to some of those coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Whitey Herzog, news of the day here in St. Louis, passed away overnight at the age of 92. One of the things that always stood out to me, Alex, anytime that you would see Whitey at like opening day or anything that he came back in town for, the dude was sharp as a whip.
Yeah.
90 years old, doesn't matter. That dude is still out there, looks great, has that classic hairstyle that we now know where it came from.
I like the Einstein versus Frankenstein. That's good, Whitey.
I like that. He was always sharp as a whip. And you mentioned this before the show today. There's nobody that you'd have better baseball conversations with than Whitey Herzog. The dude was an absolute savant when it came to baseball. And George Brett's right, what he told us a little bit ago. He was somebody that would not waver from the style of play that he managed. And Brett said that he could not manage today. I think it's less of a could not and more of a would not. I don't think he would be willing to manage the way that baseball is played in 2024. Now, more so today than what it was 2 or 3 years ago, but there was a very specific style, and when that style ceased to exist here in St. Louis, he said no more. He said, I'm not doing this anymore. In Kansas City, this is the other thing that I think he'll be remembered for, is that in KC, he had a clause in his contract that was a bonus for the attendance that took place in Kansas City. And before he got there, it was like 1 million fans in the stands. And then, boom, 3 million fans because they were winning every single year that Whitey was at the helm. And then they didn't win, and the owner, you heard that reference there by George Brett as well, said, get out of here, you're done. I don't want to pay this bonus anymore. This is my first opportunity, might be my last one, you're done.
Damn you for bringing fans to the stadium.
Came here to St. Louis and had the same opportunity where he now has full, basically, ownership, essentially, of the team, the roster. And so he was able to make the roster in his name, his image. He did so. They had a ton of success, and it resonated. Whitey Herzog knew what sold to fans. He knew, I understand that he played to his ballpark, sure. He also knew what would sell to his fan base. He knew what wins, he knew what sells. And when you have that style of baseball, it resonates with fans. What is baseball trying to artificially create in 2024 by the rules? They're trying to have more teams play as close to a style of baseball as what Whitey did in the 80s as they possibly can. And they're trying and failing to do so. But Whitey just did that by saying, okay, I'll just get the guys that can play that style of baseball. If I have in 2024 Corbin Carroll, yeah, he's going to play that style. So I find all of that to be really interesting, that he was so far ahead of his time in terms of what sold to the fans.
Yeah, when I was working for the Cardinals radio network on KMOX, the place to be during Cardinals season was that broadcast booth, because in between innings, prior to games, after games, the conversations that would take place of Mike Shannon, John Rooney, Mike Claiborne, Red Shane Deese, and Whitey Herzog, you just wanted to be a fly on that wall. And, I mean, you're right. Like, the baseball knowledge that would fly back and forth in that broadcast booth was just unheard of. I mean, the intelligence that man had, and, I mean, we're talking about him being late 70s, early 80s, and I learned a lot about baseball just talking to him. And I appreciate the type of manager he was. And again, I never got to see it in person. I can only go off of stories and see videos of it.
You can feel it, though, when you're at opening day.
Oh, absolutely.
You see what the ovations are and who the players are that get the biggest ovations.
Yeah.
It was his players.
I could also hear it just from stories being told to you about who Whitey Herzog was, whether it was players or fans. The impact of one individual who really, I mean, if you think about it, put baseball back on the map in St. Louis. It's not like it disappeared, but, I mean, there were some tough times in the 70s without Whitey Herzog coming off of teams that won multiple World Series. And then the moment he steps through the door, you're talking about second place, first place, World Series lost. Like, you're talking in a matter of 6 years, 3 World Series appearances. And then the part that I love so much about Whitey, because the man had one. When he had something he believed in, he stuck to it, and he showed it the moment he stepped away from being a Cardinals manager. He basically said, I can't do this because the players don't want to play this style, and I'm done. How many guys can say, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore, and then stay in that organization for the remainder of their life and be as impactful as Whitey Herzog is?
Yeah, he said, I don't want to do this anymore, and then he never came back.
No.
That's the difference between him and, like, so many other managers.
Like, Tony came back.
Think about how many managers say, I'm I'm done with this. And then like 5 years later, they just can't stop. It's almost like a drug for them, right? They need to continue coming back to the game, and they're just craving it. They're craving the need for that competitiveness, to be a part of it, to have some skin in the game. Whitey said, I'm done, and he never came back. And that was it.
His passion was quail hunting.
Yeah, clearly.
Got to go get those quails.
And fishing, of course.
And fishing.
There are a couple of statements from Major League Baseball that I do want to get to. The first comes from Rob Manfred. Quote, Whitey Herzog was one of the most accomplished managers of his generation and a consistent winner with both I-70 franchises. He made a significant impact on both the Cardinals as a manager and GM, and with the Royals as the manager, and with the New York Mets in player development. Whitey's Cardinals teams reached the World Series 3 times in the 1980s, winning the championship at 82 by leaning on an identity of speed and defense that resonated with baseball fans across the world. On behalf of Major League Baseball, I extend my deepest condolences to the Whitey Herzog family, friends across the game, and the fans of both the Cardinals and the Royals. John Denton has a statement that he has released as well from Bill DeWitt Jr. on the passing of Whitey Herzog, saying, on behalf of the entire Cardinals organization, I would like to offer our condolences to the family and many friends of Whitey Herzog. Whitey and his teams played a big part in changing the direction of the St. Louis Cardinals in the early 1980s with an exciting style of play that would later become known as Whitey ball throughout baseball. Whitey loved the Cardinals, their fans, and the city of St. Louis, and he will be sorely missed. Whitey Herzog passed away overnight at the age of 92. Coming up next, Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic.
Alex Ferrario with you and with my insurance agent. She is Tracy Bibb, truly the best when it comes to your home and auto insurance, taking care of people and making sure they are protected. And Tracy, I saw that you posted some exciting news. You got another initiative for your next marathon that you're running.
Yeah, so this will actually, I ran a half marathon, collected money for that. Now I'm going to actually go full throttle and do a marathon. So we are, with every quote that we do, we are donating money to that. Granted, you can also donate if you'd want to be a part of it, just in general. Also, if you are a current client, you refer to us, we are donating. Now is the perfect time to talk to us. If you are one of the people who had roofs damaged during the hailstorm that we had recently in St. Louis, perfect time to give us a call. We give a great discount for new roofs, and we don't mind that you've had a claim. So give us a call. Let us see what we can do about your insurance.
Making sure she's getting you the most competitive rate. You just heard about how she truly cares about the community and her clients. Give her a call today. Ask for the free non-committal quote, 314-328-4260. That's 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bib. Tracy, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Go Cards.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Former St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame manager Whitey Herzog passed away today at the age of 92, and we'll continue to talk and share stories of Whitey Herzog throughout the day. A former player of his and a former manager in the big leagues himself, Clint, will join us later on in the show today. And if you missed our interview with the Hall of Famer George Brett, you can check that out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. Cardinals will be back in action tonight as well when they take on the Oakland Athletics, as Lance Lynn will get the start for St. Louis. The Sports Update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN, and we are happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic. He dropped a piece earlier today titled Analysis of the Blues Coaching Search. Is Drew Bannister done? Joel Quenneville? David Carl?
University of Denver head coach who just won the national championship and won it 2 years ago.
There's a question mark afterwards. Maybe that's the answer for the Blues. Jeremy Rutherford joins us now via the 101 ESPN hotline to discuss his article. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. As we stand today, what is your view of the Blues coaching search?
Well, first of all, what you do is you put a bunch of names in the headline with question marks so you can't be wrong, right?
There you go. That's the way to do it.
Well, and you piqued BK's interest, JR, so 2 out of 2.
That's what we did there. Yeah, no, good to be with you guys. As this Blues coaching search, I guess the storyline will pick up some steam here with the Blues wrapping up the season tomorrow in Dallas, and Drew Bannister, who's done a really good job with this team, 604 points percentage since he took over in mid-December. That's 13th in the NHL. In that span, is still in the mix, is what I'm reporting in my story today at The Athletic. But I think it's a situation where the Blues still have the feelers out on a couple candidates, and that might be why they're not ready to commit to Drew Bannister yet, while they wait to get a response from a couple people. I think David Carl, you mentioned Denver University, is one of those candidates. Just won his second national championship. Been at Denver for 6 years. He played there, graduated there. Just 34 years old. Probably a guy who Doug Armstrong sees can relate to young players really well. Obviously not that much older than these guys. And then, of course, we can't write the piece without talking about Joel Quenneville, and he still needs to be reinstated by the league. But I think the Blues have shown some interest in him in the past. So two opposite ends of the spectrum, a 34-year-old and a 65-year-old. But as we get further along with this coaching search, I think that those are names that we should pay attention to.
Jer, what do you think Doug's looking for with this next coach? Because, a lot of Blues fans see Bannister and say, well, he got them to win. He got the best out of Kyrou, and Thomas was a point-per-game player, and look at the growth of some of these young players. What do you feel like the aspect is that they're looking for with the coach?
Well, and I think that's why we shouldn't be quick to dismiss Drew Bannister. I know that there's feelings on both sides on Drew Bannister, the job that he did from a production standpoint with the team and certain individuals. But, yeah, there's some people out there that don't think he's the guy. Yeah, I think it's all going to come down to what direction is Doug Armstrong going with this team. And he's continuously said that they want to be competitive during this retool. So to me, that would speak to an experienced coach, but can an experienced coach come in here and have a roster that's ready to win now? I think we'll hear more from Doug Armstrong on Thursday, as he continues to talk about his plan, and then we could have a better idea of what he's looking for. But I really do think you're right, Alex. The direction that Doug Armstrong is going to take this thing, I think says a lot about the coach that he's going to hire and vice versa.
Jared, this is not one of those sound bite types of conversations that we can have, but with Joel Quenneville, I mean, it's impossible to ignore his name being included here, and given what took place in his time with Chicago and the controversy that surrounded it in recent years. If you're the Blues, are you really opening up that door? And considering him as a candidate, given everything that took place in Chicago, like, you got to do a lot of background on that, right? I mean, a ton of it.
Yeah, I think so. But this is how I see it. I know that Doug Armstrong has given a lot of people a second chance. You could look at Jim Montgomery when he was let go in Dallas, and then the Blues hired him as assistant coach. I know that that's a completely different situation. Number one, because you're talking about assistant coach versus bringing in Quenneville as a head coach. Secondly, the Quenneville story, the Chicago story, has been the story for the last couple of years in the National Hockey League. So it's going to raise a lot of eyebrows. But, I go back to Doug giving second chances, and I also go back to the fact that, it's kind of a 24-hour news cycle. Whoever hires Joel Quenneville, if he's reinstated in the league, I think is going to deal with that for a few days, maybe a couple weeks, but there's going to be a press conference. He's going to answer as many questions as he could or wants to. And then I hate to say it, in today's society, people are going to move on. And I think that I can't say with any certainty that the Blues are ready to take that on and they have no question, they would hire Joel Quenneville. I don't want to go that far, but I think it's a situation where there has been interest in the past in Quenneville. And I honestly don't see all of that as being a stumbling block if they identify Joel Quenneville as the guy they want to bring in here, and there's interest on his part as well.
Man, I get it, but like the second chance for Quenneville, in my opinion, is just so vastly. And JR, I know you're just giving the perspective of the team. Like, why would they explore this? Not necessarily your perspective, I appreciate that, but giving a second chance to Montgomery, who is recovering from something, is so much different in my mind than giving a second chance to a guy that at least fostered the environment as a head coach where something so despicable could take place. And there are still so many things that we just don't understand or know about what took place behind the scenes there. And I'm not like accusing Quenneville of anything. I'm not even, just don't know what exactly took place. Personally, it would be a very uncomfortable hire for me if that is the direction that the Blues decided to go here. And I would also add this, and I do think this is part of the calculus, and this is just purely from the hockey perspective, if we shift there, JR, if you're the Blues and you're in the midst of a retool and you hire a guy at Quenneville's age with his background, his history, man, I just don't know if the Blues should be the team that is exploring that kind of a route instead of going the direction of, hey, let's get a guy that's younger, that maybe has some upside here, and then 3 to 5 years from now, we can start winning with him at the helm. It just seems like a puzzling decision from basically all fronts, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that, and that's what I say. That's what I mean when I say that it depends which direction. Are you trying to win in the next couple of years? Are you going to move out some players on this roster, move out some salary, and bring in some players that you think can win now? Heck, if you're Joel Quenneville, you want to go to a situation like that, much less, the Blues be in a position where they want to bring in a coach who can win in the next couple of years. Like, I don't disagree with you. I think that there's plenty of reasons why you could say, hey, you're young, you're in a retool, maybe you're not in position, whether it be Joel Quenneville or anybody else 65 years old who's been around forever. So I could see the Blues going in a different direction, and that's why I think David Carl could be a guy that really intrigues them.
JR, one other one that I wanted to ask you about, because we'll get more information on this on Thursday, I would imagine, when Doug speaks with the media, but I'm sure you saw the tweet, and if you didn't hear the Stillman interview that I had at the first intermission, this is the quote he gave me about the upcoming offseason. He said, I don't want to overhype our offseason. We want our fans to know our offseason will be about in-house development and recalibrating our roster. We're sticking to our plan. How do you hear that?
Yeah, I did hear that. Good interview with Tom Stillman, by the way. And the way I hear it,
not a big deal. Just no big deal, Blues chairman.
the way I hear that is that they're going to stick with this, and they don't want to move out assets. They don't want to move out picks and players to get established players who can help them win in the next couple of years. But having said that, as I just touched on a couple times, Doug Armstrong, every opportunity has talked about being competitive. So I don't expect them to, as Tom Stillman told you, get involved heavily in the free agent market. If they do make trades, I think it's going to be to move out some of these players that we've talked about with the long-term contracts. Maybe you got to spice up the deal, add something to it to move out a contract. But what Doug Armstrong has said is they want to be competitive, but they're not going to do it at the expense, as Tom said, of moving out a lot of these assets and draft picks. They're still in that position that they feel they're 2 or 3 years away.
Jeremy Rutherford is our guest here on 101 ESPN. JR, are you ready for some reckless speculation?
No.
I'm always ready for it. I'm used to it when you guys call me.
Hey, touche to that.
Hey, you hearing anything about Brady Tkachuk?
Now that is reckless. You're right.
That is very reckless. But I love it, JR. Tell us he's coming to St. Louis.
Well, I don't have any inside information on that. I haven't.
Come on, JR.
Sure.
I haven't reached out to the Tkachuks on this one. But here's what I think about this. If your name gets mentioned by some high-profile people, which we know the Spittin' Chicklets guys, Whitney mentioned Tkachuk's name, I don't think there can be nothing to it. And so if you're Ottawa and if you're in a rebuild, and also from the Tkachuk side, if you're Brady, I know he's had his heart in that city and he's helped them as much as he can. But if you don't see a future there, maybe you do want to be on the move. And I guess to fuel any reckless speculation, if I'm the Blues, I'd be entirely all in. And you don't want to give up the farm. You're not going to send them. I've seen some trade proposals that includes multiple, the Kyrous, the Hofers, the draft picks. I get it. It'd be great to add a player like Brady Tkachuk, and you're going to have to give to get. I get it, but at the same time, you have to be a little careful in that situation. But I would be all in as much as you can be with the idea of keeping some semblance of a roster together that you could add Brady Tkachuk to.
So I got 2 questions left for you, JR. One quick one. Kyrou and Booch for Tkachuk, who says no?
Well, I think that's something that you could do, because if you're going to swap Kyrou, and Tkachuk, you make that deal. You could lose Booch in free agency, but I personally probably would go a different route and move them. Well, you could move them separately, right? You could move Kyrou and potentially bring in a player, not Tkachuk. You're going to have to add to that to make that deal happen. And then I think there's going to be a ton of interest, as we saw this past year with Buchnevich at the trade deadline, coming up at the next trade deadline. So I think that you might be able to generate a little bit more in return if you separated those two.
All right, final thing, and we'll get you out of here on this, JR. We appreciate the time as always. I did want to ask you about Zach Bolduc, who has played pretty well, I would say, over the last couple of weeks, especially since getting that opportunity with Robert Thomas on the top line. Looks like he's going to once again be up there for the final game of the regular season. What's been your early impression this year from Zach Bolduc, especially since getting the opportunity in the top 6?
Yeah, from a fan perspective, I think you have to be incredibly excited that he got these 25 games or so. Because I think he's shown a lot, for one, and I think he's put himself in a position where they can go to the drawing board in the offseason and pencil him in there somewhere, at least if they're going to give him a shot at camp if he shows it. The one thing, and I wrote it the other day, I love about Zach Bolduc, I've gotten this impression every single time I've talked to him, interviewed him, texted, that he wants to learn. Like, every time I talk to him, he'd talk about going into Patrick Waugh's office and studying the defensive zone and getting better in that area. And then you talk to Drew Bannister, you talk to some of these teammates, and they say that he's really engaging when you talk to him and want to teach him the finer points. And so I think he's going to be a good one. I think we talk a lot about Snuggerud, Neighbors, a lot of these guys deservedly so. But I think we can start to put Zach Bolduc into that category based on the early returns here.
It's really encouraging stuff. Hey, JR's piece breaking down exactly what he's seeing, what he's expecting this offseason via the coaching search, available for you right now over at The Athletic. It is really good stuff, some insight into all of the different coaching candidates that he could see the Blues at least considering. All of that over at The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter for the link at JP Rutherford. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. Thanks for entertaining our reckless speculation. We'll talk with you again next week.
Anytime, boys. Thanks.
You got it. That's JR joining us here, as he does each and every Tuesday on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate his time. What do you think about that Brady Tkachuk hype?
Sounds sexy to me.
You
heard
ready
him
for
say
another offseason of Tkachuk?
Tkachuk 2.0, the path of totality.
3.0, right?
Is it 3.0?
I mean, I would imagine Big Walt was 1.0.
Well,
Matthew
but
was 2.0.
That was trade deadline, and then he came back. You knew he was coming back. But sure, if you want to go down that path, I'll say 2.5. How about that?
Sure, kind of like the Lion King, where they did the 1.5.
And I saw Lion roar in that movie, and it was majestic.
Nah, totally different than in real life, dude. It's nothing like the experience.
I don't know. If we see a Brady Tkachuk come to St. Louis, that'll be as majestic, if not more majestic, than seeing a lion roar.
I don't know until I see it, so I'm should probably see it.
I'll tell you.
Something that you need to experience in
It's
person.
majestic. I can't wait for them to offer up, like, Nathan Walker for Brady Kachuk.
That
They're
would
like,
be-
hey, this is our best offer. And there goes Kachuk.
Give
Well,
you a
that won't be it.
5th-round
It'll be
pick.
Torrey Krug and Justin Falk and Marco Scandella, who's happens to
Everybody
be
that
a
has
free
a no
agent.
trade.
Michelle of Vladimir Tarasenko.
Who else would they offer? Brandon Saad.
Oh, yeah.
Brandon Saad, Torrey Krug, Justin Falk, and a second-round pick.
3
Conditional,
no-trade clauses waived in 1 trade. What the hell?
all going to Ottawa, of course, because that's the natural landing spot for guys with the no-trade clause.
I'll say this, though, joking aside. That is the type of move that you tell your fans, like, hey, we understand this is a retool, but we're going to be aggressive and bring in the right players that we feel like can win. And I agree with JR. Ryan Whitney does not put that out unless he is hearing it from a reliable source. He doesn't just throw it out there to throw out there.
There's too much smoke there for there to be no fire.
And Brady
Not telling
Tkachuk-
you that he will be traded this offseason specifically,
Yeah.
but there's too much there to just say, yeah, nothing happened and definitely not on the table for anybody.
Right.
If they get an offer that they can't refuse, I would imagine there will at least be conversations, but there is no upside for Ottawa to say that. Of course they're going to shut everything down. Why would they want other teams to know, other fans to know, their fans to know, that they are potentially shopping their captain?
And you
Makes
got
no
a
sense.
new general manager. Like, he's learning the ropes right now, and this is not an easy thing to learn right off the gate. But this is going to be there's going to be more smoke around this in the offseason.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone on BK. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we're going to be joined by former Major League Baseball manager, former Cardinal, by the way, as well, and Kansas City Royal under Whitey Herzog. Clint Hurdle will join us to remember Whitey Herzog coming up at 12 o'clock. In the 12 o'clock hour, I did not want to shortchange this in terms of the amount of time that we had here to discuss it. We will also give our thoughts on the possibility of Joel Quenneville as the next head coach for your St. Louis Blues, so stay tuned for that in the 12 o'clock hour. But next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Ted Drew's, who are inviting you to their 95th anniversary celebration. Of course, been in business for 95 years off of Chippewa, that famous frozen custard where families have been building traditions for 95 years. And in celebration of that, it is an afternoon of fun, flavor, and fond memories off of the Chippewa location. Thursday, April 25th, they'll have 95-cent cones, local food, family-friendly activities. That's going to have music, face painting. Fredbird is going to be out there. Of course, the Cardinals mascot. They've got community support and so much more. And there are tons of charities involved, including Cardinal Glennon, St. Louis Area Food Bank, and Stray Rescue of St. Louis. So make sure you put it on your calendar, April 25th, to get out to Ted Drew's and celebrate 95 years of Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. And, of course, while you're out there, you'll get some of the best flavors like the Cardinal Sin, tart cherries, hot fudge, vanilla frozen custard served as a concrete or a sundae. Head on out, Ted Drew's. It really is good, guys and gals.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Clint Hurdle, former Major League Baseball manager, former Cardinal, former Royal, played under Whitey Herzog. He'll join us coming up here in just about 10 minutes or so. But right now it is time for your questions. Alex, let's start with this from the 314. Realistically speaking, Kyrou plus blank gets you Brady Tkachuk. Can you fill in that blank?
Kyrou plus Hofer plus your first-round draft pick this year gets you Tkachuk.
I'd probably do it.
I would do that. Because if there's one thing that I can say about, now look, Hofer's ready now. These guys aren't. But the Blues goaltending pipeline is the strength that they have. This Colton Ellis and Vadim Zarenko are kind of on the same trajectory as what Joel Hofer was. But you're still waiting a couple of years. Now you're talking about going into the backup world again, which we've seen with Chad Johnson and Thomas Greiss. Doesn't pan out very well for you, which could cause more problems. But
Zarenko's not too far off, though, right?
Yeah, I think next year he probably gets a taste of it, and in 2 years you're probably talking about backup time. Ottawa doesn't want players that aren't playing anywhere by next year. Like, they don't want guys 3 years from now. So the Lindsteins, the Stenbergs, they don't want those. I don't think you're going to give up Dvorsky or Snuggerud or Neighbors. You shouldn't give up any of those three for him. Kyrou would be the biggest piece, and then you got to decide what Ottawa needs. And Ottawa needs goaltending, which I'd go Hofer over Binnington.
I do think that people underestimate how much value Jordan Kyrou still holds. I know that sounds funny for a lot of Blues fans that are frustrated.
That's a 30-goal scorer for 3 straight years that another team looks at and say, we can make him a 40-goal scorer.
In certain markets, he has a lot of value because he's already signed.
Yep.
So if you're in Ottawa, you can't, it's really hard for you to go out to the market and find a Jordan Kyrou. Like, you can't just sign that guy via free agency or trade for him with 2 years left on his deal and get him to re-sign there. That's part of the problem. Arizona has this issue in the past. Like, those kinds of markets, Winnipeg, it's really hard to attract this kind of a player. And so if you have the opportunity to trade for one, even though he comes with some question marks at a minimum, he's also got the upside of being a franchise caliber winger. Yeah. And those are hard to find, man. So if they can get one, I think he's got a lot of value to a place like Ottawa. It just depends on how they view Jordan Kyrou as his makeup and as a player. And if they value him the way that I think they probably should,
yeah,
he is a really good starting point in any kind of a deal. And I would be surprised if they could get a better player, like just any one individual player, in a trade for Brady Tkachuk. They might get better assets that are further away, but I don't think they will get any better player currently than Kyrou.
Not at that age for that price.
Correct.
Is it... You're not going to like this. Is it odd if I would say I don't know if I want to include Hofer in that? I would try and package that around.
I don't think that's odd at all.
I think
you've got the best tandem in the NHL.
Exactly. And as we've seen, Binnington needs somebody to be the supporting guy, too.
You're right.
Not to take the job from him, but he's got to have somebody that's there that can help push him and keep him fresh. And I don't know if I want to play goaltending roulette again with that backup spot as they did with Thomas Greiss. So,
and you're paying $7 million for those two, which teams typically pay somewhere between $9 and $10 million.
Which is why, like, I'm not saying I wouldn't do the trade if Hofer was involved, but I would have serious thoughts about it, of trying to pull his name out of that package and try and put somebody else in.
And I obviously would do that as well. And I think you could try. And I mean, the Kyrou and the Buchnevich thing, to me, Ottawa would love that. That's two guys that you look at and you say, man, we've got 2 top line players in their eyes for 1 top line player. But I also think if you're them, you're asking for the moon if you want Brady Tkachuk, because frankly, I mean, look, if the Nashville Predators are offering up Jussi Saros this offseason, Brady Tkachuk could get traded to Nashville. Sure. Like, people need to understand that, because Ottawa needs goaltending. If Jacob Markstrom, which I love this theory, if Jacob Markstrom gets offered up, Brady Tkachuk could get traded to the Calgary Flames.
Of course.
Another Tkachuk in Calgary. Yeah. But I think he has a no-trade clause, actually, so maybe Brady can't.
Yeah, sure, Matthew didn't,
Matthew
talk about how bad it was up there.
That's fine.
Brady Tkachuk, when you look at his deal, he does not have any no-trade protections. He's got a no-move starting in 2025, and that's probably why they would start.
Yeah, that's why you're doing it now, because if there's a problem there.
Or out.
Yeah.
No
all right.
move.
No, man,
From
we can take him in.
We'll go through these quickly. Andre Palante, why is he still a Cardinal?
Don't know, should be gone.
Whoa.
I don't have the same issue with Palante as others do.
Yeah, he gets a ball on the ground.
Yeah, and in the
Perfect
air,
middle
too.
relief. No, he doesn't. He didn't give up a home run that I know of.
I think Palante is exactly what he's supposed to be. It's not super exciting, but there's going to be games where he goes out there, gets 3 ground balls, gets out of the inning. He's going to have other games, like the most recent one, 3 ground balls, gives up 3 runs. Like that's just the way that it goes with a guy like Andre Palante, who's going to play the batted ball luck game. This guy was way more valuable 2 or 3 years ago than he is today. But as a 5th inning, middle inning reliever that can maybe give you a couple of innings at a time, I've got no problem with him being on the roster. It's just the high leverage usage that's frustrating.
And a potential double play specialist.
Yeah.
The role he's in is the Seth Maness role. Back when they had Seth Maness. Now, granted, I don't think Maness had as bad a splits as Palante does, but that's his role. So I have no issues with him.
I think they should turn him into a starter.
Too much.
Would not do that.
Stretch him
pitch
out.
to contact.
Guys, question for you. Is
That's
it time
great
for
for
the
our
Cardinals to
rotation.
get a new replay guy? Feels like they've been late with the replay review a few times so far this year. Did you see that play last night?
I thought Ollie was going to throw that security guard across the
He
field.
basically did.
My favorite part is like when
a
Ollie's
security
walking
guard,
out to
too.
the manager and he points. I know, I did feel bad for that guy.
It's somebody's
Ollie-
grandpa.
Ollie points at
He's
him.
getting fired in like 2 months.
Ollie or
Let him
the
do his
security
job.
guard?
Both.
Not fair. Oakland, they're firing everybody, dude. They're firing the concessions people.
Dude,
That's somebody's grandpa, and Ollie's just throwing him around like a rag doll.
my favorite part from that whole scenario was when Ollie gets to the umpires and points at the security guard. The security guard throws up the hand.
Yeah, that was me.
Like,
That was me.
sorry.
Sorry, I was doing my job,
You gotta-
Ollie.
I do feel for Ollie. Like, what are you supposed to do in that spot? There's no winning because you have like.
Well, why couldn't the umpire? What, the umpire couldn't see him because the security guard walked in front? Hey, Ollie,
That's correct.
use this thing called your voice.
I mean, that he did what he's supposed to do to get the replay.
Yeah, but if there's a
Unfortunately,
dude-
there was a total eclipse in front of him.
It was the path of totality.
Coming up next, Clint Hurdle here on 101 ESPN. I got to tell you about my friends over at Circus Sports in Illinois. Alex, this is the biggest sports book in Las Vegas, and now they are available to you at your fingertips in the state of Illinois. And I want to place some bets on the NFL draft. It is right around the corner, and that means we've got some over-under. Circa released these yesterday. Alex, I'm already getting in on some of these. I'm going to win big because J.J. McCarthy is absolutely going to be selected prior to the 6th overall pick. I'm taking the under on that. 5.5 is his over-under going into this year's draft. You got a Mizzou player, Darius Robinson, 29.5 is his over-under. I love Darius Robinson. I think he goes over that. I think he goes after the 29th pick. And then one more. We talked about Brock Bowers yesterday. He's at the 11.5. That's his number right now. I'm going to go under on him. I think the Jets get crazy and decide to take him in the top 12. So I've got those 3 for me. Alex, people got to start betting over on the Circus Sports app in Illinois.
You need to turn that into a big parlay like I'm going to do. I'm just going to select the first 5 players selected and make it a parlay and win all of the money because Circa is making sure you bring in the most money possible. They're not limiting players based off of winnings. They're making sure everybody has the same limit. So check them out. Find out why BK and I only use Circa Sports Illinois betting app. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley, and we are happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to continuing the legacy and remembrance of Whitey Herzog, as Clint Hurdle joins us now on the show. Former Major League Baseball manager, played for Whitey Herzog, both in Kansas City and here in St. Louis as well. Clint, we always appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us today, unfortunately due to the circumstances. But I did want to ask you the question that we asked to George Brett earlier today. When I say the name Whitey Herzog, the first thing that comes to mind for Clint Hurdle is what?
He had the crazy cool ability to make everybody on the team feel important. And you kind of knew where you stood on the team. You know, there was times I was the 25th man on the team, and Whitey had that ability to, hey, Brycel's throwing Thursday in Pittsburgh. Clarkie can't hit him. You're my man. Get ready. You're the guy, okay? Those kind of things, just keeping you engaged, keeping you involved. And I was fortunate to play for him twice, as you said. Once as an up-and-coming rookie, and then as a guy, an older guy that had to figure some things out and just kind of fill the gaps of all the other guys who were playing every day. And he treated me as a significant part of the team both times. Probably rode me a lot harder when I was a rookie for all the right reasons, and then leaned into me for some insight as I got older. Best thing about Whitey for me was every time we went back to St. Louis, and I was managing a club, either Colorado or Pittsburgh, he was there. He was there mostly for every game, if not at least once during the homestand. And those days with Pittsburgh, Nick Leva and I would pull him into that office, and we would laugh, and he would share things. He's watching games on TV, but you know, I've called him once a year, every year since I left. We used to have breakfast in St. Louis when I'd come in, so I was really hoping to see him this year in Cooperstown as I'm going up to see Pelton and Jimmy Leland get inducted, and I was hoping to see Whitey. But, you know, I'll see him at a later time, but I love the man.
So, Clint, take me back to a 20-year-old Clint Hurdle when you joined the Kansas City Royals for the first time, because Whitey's already 3 years in as the manager. What was that first interaction like with Whitey?
Well, Whitey was larger than life in a lot of ways, and, you know, he definitely was a guy that the players wanted to play well for. I think he gave them all, as I heard George say, you know, the trust he put in them gave them confidence. And, you know, whether it was Hal McRae or Paul Splittorff or George, Pautek, Frank White, you can go throughout the deal. The only guy that would go toe-to-toe with Whitey and probably disagree more with him than the other player was Amos Otis. and him and A.O. had their own thing going. Sometimes it was comical to watch, and they both believed in what they believed, and both neither backed down. The two guys I saw A.O. stand toe-to-toe with, which would catch you off guard, one was Whitey and the other was Nolan Ryan. A.O. never backed down from Nolan. Whitey just, you know, one of the funniest things he shared with me also is after I got into my managerial career a little bit, he goes, "Hey, kid," he goes, "you remind me of myself a lot." I said, "Well, what's that, Whitey?" This wasn't when I was early. This was later. He goes, "You know, once you figured out to stop playing, you got pretty good at the game." But as a rookie, you know, there was times when he really gave me what I need. Sometimes it was a pat on the back, sometimes it was a smack on the ass. It was a hard situation walking into, and I think one of the reasons we got to talk about later was, you know, he traded John Mayberry my rookie year, and I was supposed to never play first base until the end of spring training. It was hard. And it was hard. And I think that maybe in retrospect, we talked about a little bit, you know, he said, maybe I asked a little bit more out of you than you're capable of giving, but I believed in you. What kid's going to tell Whitey, well, you want me to play first? No, Whitey, I don't think I'm best served doing that. You go over there and you play first the best way you can. Some days it wasn't very good. Some days it was okay. But I do believe we got to figure out things together from the time in Kansas City and then in St. Louis. And unfortunately, I was there in '87 when we weren't good. But Whitey taught me so much about the game, from being an everyday player pretty much, and then a platoon player at times. But in St. Louis, I was a backup. You know, I backed up the four corners. I backed up catching. I spent time in the bullpen. But Whitey opened me up to even thinking about managing someday. What do you see? What are you thinking about? What did you see in the game last night? And I think it was more just to keep me engaged. I was never going to be a sourpuss or a cynical guy because I wasn't playing, because all the guys playing in front of me were better than me at that time. But I learned a lot from Whitey and cherished the time we spent together after I was done playing. He was an ex-manager. I was a manager. And those phone calls that I would have once a year, we always laughed. We just laughed. And one thing, he was really, really in a good place later on with just fishing, with just spending time with the grandkids, just spending the time with Mary Lou, at least what he shared with us. And, you know, he would come back and he'd watch a ball game on TV, and his recall was still so amazing. He would actually watch games that when we weren't in St. Louis every once in a while, he goes, yeah, there was nothing else on, so I flipped on your game. You know, he had that way of the backhanded compliment that always kept you smiling. Couldn't find anything else on, kids, so I watched your game. Hey, that thing you did in the ninth inning, that was pretty sharp. And always finding a way to put straw back in your body. You know, if you're getting beat up a little bit, he was able to help you find a way to get back on your feet and keep thinking positive.
Was he the reason that you chose St. Louis, Clint, him being the manager for the Cardinals?
Well, I didn't choose him. They drafted me Rule 5. So they brought me in because it gave him a chance. Actually gave him a chance to utilize his roster better because I could back up more people. You know, he was always ahead of the game. Whitey ball, bullpen usage, creating havoc. I mean, speed. When the turf fields came in, that was right up Whitey's alley. He never played on turf, but he had vision, forward vision, as good as any man I've ever come across in the game. You know, he was manipulating relievers, putting 2 relievers at the game, 1 play in the outfield, lineup, the way he'd construct the lineup, all of it. And I even remember, you know, in that year in '87, it wasn't like the middle of June, and he told the world the Mets are winning it all. Everybody else is fighting for second, and we're all going to be far, far away. He'd say things that he just felt. And sometimes it would spark you one way, and sometimes it'd spark you the other. But you always knew where you stood with Whitey. When they drafted me Rule 5, I could not have been happier to get another chance to play for him and to learn from him. And then I met a bunch of wonderful people in St. Louis as a byproduct. So,
Clint Hurdle is our guest here on 101 ESPN. As he mentioned, he played for Whitey Herzog both in Kansas City and then here in St. Louis as well. Has a good relationship, as basically everybody does, both on and off the field with Whitey Herzog. Clint, I did want to ask you, when it comes to, you know, your baseball philosophy, right, how you view the game, how much was that influenced by your experiences with Whitey Herzog?
Well, there was definitely some nuggets I've walked away with and I've kept in tune with. And we would talk about the game. I mean, as early as last winter, we talked about the game, rule changes. We just stayed in touch. But watching how he used the bullpen, and the one thing that Whitey was really good, as I said earlier, again, he didn't hit 1,000. He didn't make every player feel like I felt. I'm sure you get a handful of players, or maybe more, that didn't have a good relationship with him. That's just the nature of managing. But I know from my perspective, in a couple tough situations, he knew what the conversation to have. Sometimes it was love, sometimes it was tough love. They're both love, and like I said, it's a pat on the back or a smack on the ass. He also would just tell you the truth, you know, and he wasn't a head bomber. He would tell you how he felt and what he saw. And I think as much as anything is that he believed in what he believed in, and he butted heads with, you know, ownership at times. I mean, think about it now. He was a general manager and a manager. And now I can't even fathom that. From my work as a manager, how much I had on my plate, my hands were full, and he did both. Him and, you know, McKeon were like the last two that did both in baseball. To be smart, to know all of the game backwards and forwards, and to be able to make relationships work. Made some hard trades, made some hard decisions. But to put the Royals on the map, yes, he's had good players. The World Series trips, the work done in St. Louis. But he was always able to get maybe a little bit more out of a team than I think some other people may have gotten out of it. And truthfully, in Kansas City, he put the Royals on the map with those teams they were able to put together. And then the games with the Yankees became iconic. But his style of baseball, it caught on. And, you know, it's been emulated and revisited to this day. on certain things. Now teams are going back to speed. Teams are going back to defense. Teams are going back to running and stealing bases. So he left fingerprints all over the game of baseball, not just in Kansas City and St. Louis, but all over the game and all over a bunch of people that played for him or worked for him.
A final question that I've got for you, Clint. We'll get you out of here on this, and we sincerely appreciate the time today. When you look back on his time, both in KC and in St. Louis, as you mentioned, he really resonated with the fan base. You look at the attendance numbers. I mean, by the time he left Kansas City, they were getting 2.5 million people through the stands. Here in St. Louis, it was 3 million people that were coming through the stands into the late 80s. What was it about Whitey Herzog's style baseball, in your opinion, that resonated with fans wherever it was that he went?
Well, I think it's twofold. Yeah, the style of baseball, because it was team. There was community on the team. There was a bunch of guys pulling for each other. Nobody cared who got the credit. At the same time, he'd speak his mind. He's the guy down the street. You know, he's the head of the Little League. You know, he's a Little League president. He was a community. You think about the places Whitey coached, he lived there. Number one, he lived every place he managed. He invested. His family became a part of the community. He'd go to the barber shop. He'd go fishing, the restaurants, all of it. He was everybody's best friend or somebody they could all identify. He wasn't unreachable. And when you looked at Whitey, you didn't think, oh, my gosh. He had that smile and that ability to start a conversation that just made you feel like he saw you.
Clint, we appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate and enjoy getting all these stories from you, from your experiences with Whitey Herzog. Wish you nothing but the best. Hopefully we'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
You got it. That's Clint Hurdle, former Major League Baseball manager, played under Whitey Herzog both here in St. Louis and also in Kansas City. Alex, for just our reference point, when he talked there at the end about what resonated between Whitey Herzog and the two cities in which he managed, it reminded me a lot of Craig Berube.
Yeah.
The everyman that just like had a laugh that resonated, would go down to the street, have a beer, go fishing for Whitey Herzog. There's some similarities there. Obviously, there are also some differences in the sports in which they manage / coach, notwithstanding, but some similarities there in terms of the way that they resonate with this fan base here in St. Louis for sure.
That's a really good one. The other one that came to mind when he was talking was Bobby Plager.
Sure,
and Bobby Plager he was a coach for the Blues, but it was a very short time. He won a championship when he was in the minor leagues for the Blues. But like him talking about the everyman to where like players would listen to him, front office would listen to him, fans would listen to him when he showed up at Bobby's place to drink a beer or O.B. Clark's. And you also would have him having impact on everybody around the organization. That to me is a lot of what it felt like with Whitey Herzog. And again, differences because Bobby never coached a championship team nor a 3-time championship team like Whitey Herzog did. But I think when you talk about the personality side of it to where he was such a legend in terms of anybody that stepped in the building knew the name, but you also could have a conversation with them and not even know who you were talking to. Like Joey tells a great story on the road trip with Bobby Plager of like, it was the Stanley Cup Finals and Joey and his dad, Joey's dad just like randomly caught up with this dude and was like, who is this guy? And they were talking the whole time. And then he finds out later that it was Bobby Plager. So like that to me seems a lot like what Whitey Herzog was. I knew who he was, but the moment I stepped into that broadcast booth, it wasn't I'm talking to a Hall of Famer. It's I'm talking to a scout. I'm talking to a fan. You would just talk baseball with Whitey, and that's what I loved most about it.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Hey, if you missed any of our conversation earlier today with George Brett or a conversation just moments ago with Clint Hurdle, you can check them out right now and later on today as well at 101ESPN.com. There will be a landing page over there after the shows are completed today and certainly tomorrow as well. I know the morning show is efforting some people to be able to remember the life and legacy here in St. Louis of Whitey Herzog. We will be joined tomorrow by Terry Pendleton as well. So all of that stuff will be available to you over on 101ESPN.com over the coming days to be able to remember Whitey Herzog. All right, coming up next, Alex, I don't understand why the Cardinals have to make things so difficult sometimes, and yesterday was a reminder of that. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So yesterday, before the game, we finally got our answer, our long-awaited answer on why the Cardinals have been going a different direction at shortstop multiple days a week than their young, budding star, in my opinion.
Someone must have been listening to BK and Ferrario.
And Masyn Winn. Here's Ollie Marmol prior to the game yesterday. This audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest.
He's showing a crazy amount of toughness. This is a guy that's been dealing with the lower back issue. We've been trying to give him a couple days off, so he's not going too many in a row, to be quite honest with you. I'm not sure how he played the first two in Arizona. He's been tough. He wants to be in there, and he's done a nice job. But we will control it. We're on the other side of it. He's feeling a lot better today, and we'll just keep an eye on it. But he's done really well.
Okay. So I've got some follow-ups on this. I'm a little confused.
Like, what was the sound at the end?
Well, that was Valley. Derek Gould added this.
Didn't know that was there, to be honest.
Because he had a conversation, I would imagine, with Ollie as well. They have their conversations in the manager's office prior to the games. Here's what Derek Gould wrote about over on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Over the past week, rookie shortstop Masyn Winn has been dealing with soreness in his lower back and playing through it. After speaking with the shortstop on Monday, manager Ollie Marmol disclosed the injury and said that it was a factor in Winn getting the day off on Sunday. He added that Winn, quote, felt on the other side, end quote, of the soreness, which the shortstop also experienced back in spring training. Winn said he was much better after getting the day off, and he started along with his .350 average on Monday night and singled in his first trip to the plate. Again, that comes from Derek Gould. So I guess this is what I'm confused about. Was this just something that affected him and related to the day, or went into the day off that took place in Arizona? Is it dating back all the way? Like, is the spring training back soreness, am I supposed to believe that that is now affecting him in mid-April? Because if it is, we're talking about, because I looked this up earlier today, 2 months of the back issues for Masyn Winn. But he didn't really have, once he came back from the back issues in spring training, there was no like, we need to have like a ramp up period, or, we need to have him in and then out of the lineup again. It seems to me that the back issues have just started to pop up again during the regular season. And they seem to be conveniently located on like the third days of the series or the day going into an off day. And early on this year, the explanation from the Cardinals was twofold. One, we don't want to mentally overload the kid. And two, we want to make sure that Brandon Crawford stays sharp. And now we're getting a third explanation as to why Masyn Winn is not playing, which is that his back is apparently sore. And they are referring specifically to the Arizona series. It's only one game that we're talking about here, man. Like, the 1 day off against Arizona, sure, you can totally explain that away with back soreness. In fact, it would make all the sense in the world if that was the case. But it's not just that one game that we're referencing. He's missed 4 of the first 16 games of the regular season. So that's where my confusion comes in, Alex, is if this was the case, why not just disclose that? Like, you don't even have to say, because my guess is Masyn, if this is true, Masyn told him, hey, I don't want this getting out there. Skipper, I just let me get a couple of days here and there. But Ollie's got to tell him, like, hey, listen, eventually this is going to become a story. Like, this isn't something I can just hide. You're not in the lineup. You're batting 350. Eventually, I'm going to have to answer for why you're not in the lineup day to day. And so, like, what do you want us to do here? And I think it got to that point yesterday where there was so much volume, they could no longer just say, like, hey, this is just something that is, mentally he's got to get there, whatever. I have more questions about all of this than answers after we got this answer yesterday. Alex, What was your reaction to it?
Skeptical. Call me skeptical with this. I mean, something doesn't smell right with this, to where Gorman's have dealt with back injuries and back problems. Arenado has dealt with back problems. And those guys, you see the struggles, and you're like, yeah, something's not right. It makes sense that you need to give him a day off. Every game I see Masyn Winn in, I'm not thinking, back problems. I'm thinking, this dude looks healthy. Why aren't we playing him more? Now, maybe it's something minor, like Ollie said, and you're managing it.
Absolutely.
I don't buy it. I feel like this is covering up the tracks of people are starting to question why I'm not playing him so much. So let's say that he's dealing with something and we can figure this out. Now, maybe this is just
I do believe that he's probably dealing with back stuff. This goes back to spring training. He did have back soreness that kept him out of the lineup, and they disclosed that in spring training that he was dealing with some stuff. So
fine,
I believe
but
that.
His performance isn't backing up to the point where he needs to have all of these days off. If you're dealing with it, that's fine. but not dealing with it to the sense of you're in so much pain that it's affecting your play, and we've got to sit you every third game of the series. I don't buy that.
Yeah, I'm skeptical that he's hurt just because of how this played out. And I think he probably is. He probably is dealing with something. Like, the Cardinals don't just say this because it does them no good to just make it up and say it's a back.
If they make this up.
But it is a skeptical look from the Cardinals to not say anything at all. And by the way, to continue to say, in fact, there was a quote in the paper today about Crawford and making sure you find ways to still have his timing. Like, that's essentially saying we got to get Crawford playing time. So to be saying that, to say that all along, have these off days, not mention anything, by the way, to the press about this, not bring it up at all, and then to suddenly just say, what, did we forget to mention he's been dealing with a back issue? Call me skeptical. It's a terrible look for the Cardinals.
It's just interesting it came up right after you missed the chance to win a series.
But I think they had to address it. I think part of why it came up is because the criticism had grown so loud that eventually you have to say something. You are forced to address the elephant in the room. So if they didn't come out and explain it yesterday, then we would be left to our own devices once again. And we did. Yesterday we criticized to high hell the decision to sit Masyn Winn. I think justifiably so. We now have new information available, which is that Masyn Winn in Arizona was dealing with back tightness. That explains that. And yesterday, if that was the full explanation for that one, I take back some of my criticisms from that decision. That is not a solo decision here. And we're getting texts. I knew you guys would be whining about this. Always a conspiracy story. No. My frustration with the Cardinals, and this dates back at least the last year and a half, is how they handle addressing you, the fan. I don't think they have done a very good job of keeping you informed. And that is part of the job. Part of the job is to explain your decisions to the fans. And frankly, I think Ollie's excellent at that. You don't have to always agree with his decisions. You don't have to like the way he has. Sometimes his tone is similar to mine in the way that he explains it. But I think Ollie does a really good job, if you go to talk to him, explaining why he's doing what he's doing. T-Bone, we've been down there a dozen times to talk to him about why are you handling Jordan Walker this way. Even if I walk away still saying I disagree with that, I find I walk away saying I understand their plan there. Again, even if I can disagree with the plan. This is one of those plans where I disagree with it. And if it is an injury that took place over the weekend in Arizona, or a back soreness, I guess I should say, it still doesn't explain early on in the season. It doesn't, because I can only take them based on their comments. It sounds like this was an isolated incident of the back flaring back up from spring training. So the early portion of the season appears to still be about keeping Brandon Crawford fresh. We'll see. We'll see what happens from here. We can judge them based on their actions more so than their words. That's what we have done. That's what we will continue doing. But if this continues to be a situation where he gets multiple days off a week, I still disagree with that decision. I just think it's unnecessary, and I'm not working Masyn Winn in and out of my lineup to keep Brandon Crawford fresh. That's not a dude that I'm making decisions for my young star shortstop to make things work with him. Just not something that I'm willing to do if I'm in Ollie Marmol's shoes. And by the way, so that way I'm not presenting a problem and not any kind of a solution. The solution is very simple. And Ollie does this. You walk into the office and he says, hey, listen, I know you guys are wondering. I want to address this up front. I can't say anything on the record, so please just go ahead and do your own homework on this. But if you look at Masyn Winn and the way things went for him in spring training, there's a reason why we're keeping him out of the lineup right now. Go back to look at his spring training, kind of what kept him out of the lineup then. That might be helpful in terms of informing your analysis on the situation. Boom. Now your beat writers, your analysts, everybody you're on the same page. Okay, I know what Ollie's talking about. He had the back issue. That's probably what he's dealing with here. Instead, everybody's kept into the dark, and they have given now 3 different explanations for why Masyn Winn is not in the lineup. And that's where you get into these muddy waters of everybody has a different opinion on what's going on here. Whether it's a conspiracy theory, I don't think that that's where we're at, or a criticism of just holding him out of the lineup. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And look, that's where I think that's where the frustration comes from. If this was the problem, because we got blown up on social media yesterday talking about how, we prematurely complained about something that we didn't have all the answers to. This could have been presented back in the Padres series when it was like, oh, yeah, he's still dealing with something, and we're going to be cautious with this. Or, like you mentioned, BK, look, there's stuff behind the scenes that we want to make sure we're taking care of. We've had 5 different answers of this, we want to get Brandon Crawford reps and make sure he's good to go. We don't want to overuse him because it's a long season. We want to make sure he's mentally strong enough. And then now all of a sudden it's the back injury pops up. This is just a matter of being upfront and honest with it and saying, look, there are certain elements as to why we are doing this. If you look in the past, you'll understand why, but we have reasons behind it. I don't need 4 different reasons every single time as to what's going on with Masyn Winn.
Man, I'm really surprised by the response on our text line. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. People are upset that we don't get this move. Like, do people want Brandon Crawford in the lineup? Are people just like...
It's probably the flow.
They must have missed that bases loaded situation in the second inning when he struck out versus Arizona.
I'm genuinely surprised by this. Like, it takes me aback a little bit. As a fan, don't you want to be informed on why your team is making decisions? Like, just the process.
I thought the whole reason people weren't going to the ballpark right now, they weren't happy with the way things have been handled by the Cardinals.
I thought we all wanted the young players to play. I thought that the Cardinals ruin young players.
Now, I don't know. I haven't looked at the text line, so I don't know if this is the case. I do think some people were saying yesterday, well, you don't want to give away a competitive advantage. If you say that Winn is dealing with a back issue,
what's the competitive advantage?
That's the thing is it's not that because they've said this before. You go back to last year with Nolan Gorman, they would announce before games, hey, Gorman's got a back issue. It's why he's not in the lineup. Is he available to pinch hit? Even if he's not, you still say yes, just so the other team has to think through the process of, okay, do we go to a righty here because they could pinch hit for Gorman? Like, that's all they had to say. And they had to, if it was just the Arizona series, all Ali Marmol has to say on Sunday is, hey, Wynn's dealing with a back issue. That's why he's not getting the start. Is he available off the bench? Yeah, he's available off the bench. Even if that part's not true. That's the whole part that you say. But to your guys' point, it has been 3 different stories. Even Michael Gersh, when he talked to us on opening day,
correct,
he said it's a manager decision more than likely. And what I got from that was, okay, so that means it is we got to get Crawford playing. He also said
it's about keeping guys fresh early on in the season. You don't want guys going a certain amount of time without getting into the lineup, and that would help to explain some of why guys are getting off days early on in the season. Again, I disagree with it, but whatever. At least there's an explanation. But when you have 3 different explanations for why a guy is in and out of the lineup, it leaves you wondering, which one of these am I supposed to believe? And so you're left just back to square one, which is, so what is it? What is the true explanation? I believe them, genuinely, that there was a back flare-up over the weekend, and that's why he didn't play on Sunday. I absolutely believe that was the case. But there's 3 other days that are unexplained here. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get into the junk drawer, but coming up next, there's a big story earlier today over on The Athletic from our guy Jeremy Rutherford about the Blues' next coach. Who is it going to be? What path are they going to go down? And could it be Joel Quenneville? I've got some thoughts on this. I know Alex does as well. We'll get into it next year on 101 ESPN. Alex, I walk outside in the morning every single day. I look across the street and look at my yard and say to myself, that is why I am paying Green Envy Lawn Care. Green Envy Lawn Care takes care of my front yard. They take care of my backyard. They take care of everything for me. I just don't have the time anymore. I got into this house about 2-3 years ago. We're in the St. Charles area. And Alex, when I first got there, I was like, I'm going to do it. I am going to give myself the best chance possible to have the best yard in the neighborhood. I tried it. I overseeded. I did the watering. I did the fertilizer. I did everything that I possibly could, and the result was horrendous. Instead, the next year gave Green Envy Lawn Care a call, and I'm so glad that I did. They can make your grass the envy of the neighborhood, just as they did for you and me.
Look, if you buy that cheap stuff that BK brought with Missouri soil, weather conditions, turf types, it's not going to work. You're going to be getting frustrated every single year, but instead use Green Envy that have licensed technicians certified by the Missouri Department of Agriculture that use the proper stuff that's formulated for the soil in Missouri, for weather conditions, for turf types. They take care of spring weeds. They take care of crabgrass. Give them a call today and have them come out and change the look of your lawn. 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, Saturday from 9 to 1. Tell them BK and Ferrario sent you. 636-757-1600, 636-757-1600.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The sad news out of St. Louis today is the Hall of Fame former St. Louis Cardinals manager Whitey Herzog passed away at the age of 92. And if you missed our conversations, we had the chance to catch up with Baseball Hall of Famer George Brett, who played with Whitey in Kansas City. And we also caught up with the former manager Clint Hurdle of the Pittsburgh Pirates and Colorado Rockies, as when he was a player, he played with Whitey both in Kansas City, in St. Louis. You can check out both of those interviews on our podcast page at 101ESPN.com, as the Cardinals will be back in action tonight as they take on the Oakland Athletics. Game 2 of the series starts at 8:40 as Lance Lynn will get the start against JP Sears. This portion update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
I'm reading right now from Jeremy Rutherford's piece over on The Athletic from earlier this morning. The Blues could have interest in Joel Quenneville, who has coached the 5th most games in the NHL's history and has the 2nd most wins in NHL history. Quenneville, however, has been out of the game for more than 2 years. He resigned as the coach of the Florida Panthers just 7 games into the 2021 season when his negligence in the Chicago Blackhawks sexual assault case involving former player Kyle Beach during the 2010 Stanley Cup playoffs came to light. Quenneville does want to return to coaching, but Gary Bettman has to reinstate him before that can take place. Again, that all coming from The Athletic and our guy Jeremy Rutherford. Alex, this is not a simple conversation to have. We got to give it the time that it deserves, and certainly this will not be the last time that we have the discussion about Joel Quenneville if this is a direction that the Blues consider going. I don't think they should. My firm stance on this is a very simple, I would not go down this path if I am the St. Louis Blues. I understand why, from a pure hockey sense, purely from a wins and losses perspective, you would be open to the idea of adding one of the best coaches in the history of the NHL. I get that. But you are an organization right now that is in the midst of a retool. You're trying to get yourself on the right path. You're trying to get the right vibes inside of that locker room, frankly. And you're trying to build for 2 or 3 years from now. Joel Quenneville is no longer a young man when it comes to the coaching ranks of the NHL. He is somebody that is closer to the end of his career than he is the beginning of it. If you're not going to be winning immediately, I don't know that the payoff is such, and this is a strange way to look at it, but it's the way that hockey teams will, I promise you. I don't know that the payoff is such that it is worth it for the Blues to endure what will be a deserved PR nightmare from hiring Joel Quenneville and all that comes associated with Joel Quenneville from that saga that took place in Chicago. I don't think it's worth it for the Blues. And honestly, I'm not sure that it's worth it for anybody. I'm sure that there will be people that come in on the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, that say, BK, but what about the guy in Winnipeg? The general manager there was also associated with this. Absolutely. I also would not want him to be my general manager. Firm stance on this. I just wouldn't hire somebody that was associated with what took place in Chicago in 2010. I think it's a black mark on the league. I think it's a terrible thing that took place. And even if Joel Quenneville, you take him at his word from the interview that he did with Cam and Strick, even if he wasn't as informed as we on the outside maybe would have been led to believe, it was your coaching staff, and there is some negligence that took place there when this was happening inside of your locker room. You're the head coach, man. This guy was under your umbrella, and that took place. So, no, for me, I'm a firm no. I wouldn't want it. We can continue having the discussion, and it's a worthwhile discussion because clearly the Blues have some level of interest in hiring one of the best coaches to ever coach in this league. But that is my personal stance. Alex, when you hear this, you see the reporting, there's definitely some smoke around this, that it's a possibility. What is your opinion on the matter?
Yeah, this to me has a lot of tentacles to it. And I have to separate myself a little bit in both sides because, look, from the fans' perspective, I love Joel Quenneville. I mean, Joel Quenneville is what I grew up with. late 90s, early 2000s. He was the guy that brought the President's Trophy, and you saw him have success elsewhere, and you're thinking, wow. And I watched the Puck Cancer event, and it was a sold-out Centene Community Ice Center. When they announced Joel Quenneville's name, I mean, he got loud roars. He got some of the loudest roars in that stadium. So I think from a Blues perspective, yeah, there's a lot of excitement when you hear that name. With the other side, and we'll get to that in a minute, but I think with Joel Quenneville, there's a lot of excitement around like, hey, this is a winning head coach. This is a guy that has some history with St. Louis. And to be frank, I think if he were to come back into the league, one of the few places that I feel like would welcome back a Joel Quenneville, and as JR mentioned earlier, a 24-hour news cycle, I think St. Louis would be one of those that look at it and say, yeah, disgusting past. He was a part of it, but you also understand he's going to get back into the league. And so that's the part that I try and separate myself from, because there is an excitement side to it, because I love Joel Quenneville. Now, on the personal side of it, I listened to that full interview that Joel Quenneville did with Andy Strickland. And look, there's a reason he did that interview. It's not just a, hey, I'm going to speak out now. It's, you know, we're trying to get back into the league. And there were elements that I listened and I said, ooh, Joel, probably should have prepared a little bit better than that one, because with this PR, you being the first to talk, you got to make sure you're taking care of this. But on the other side of it, listening to it, and I understand it is one side of the story. We've got the other side. People have spoke about it. People have written about it. People have all of the information. But hearing Joel Quenneville explain the scenario, again, let me reiterate, this is a disgusting event that took place, and I don't condone any of it. But it sounds like Joel Quenneville was stuck between a rock and a hard place.
According to him.
According to him, again, and I'm not justifying it all. I'm just giving you my perspective on this, just when I heard it. It sounded like, yes, he's the coach, and at the time of this being unveiled to him in 2010, he was in the front office with all of the members, Kevin Cheveldayoff, Stan Bowman, all of these individuals that, from Joel Quenneville's perspective, said, we got this. You focus on the cup. Could he have done something about this? Absolutely. Quenneville even said he should have done something about this. But Quenneville reiterated that, look, in Chicago, it was a very firm, you do your job, we'll do our job, and don't overstep any boundaries. So that perspective of it, I understand where Joel's coming from, and I see his side of it. The part that, and I read Mark Lazarus's piece also, and again, I'm trying to like take the Blues fan side out of it and just go from the hockey perspective. The tough part about it is, too, is in Lazarus's piece, he only honed in on one thing that Joel said. And if you listen to the full podcast, Joel talked about how he's had an extensive conversation with Kyle Beach. Now, he did say that Beach has not condoned him being back into the NHL, or if he really didn't get into what their conversation was. But Joel said that he's had extensive conversations with Kyle Beach. He also stated that over these last 3 years, he's been doing a lot of work with different groups and people and speaking events and learning more about it. He's educating himself, which you would expect anybody to do in this situation, which, again, I understand it's all PR. I'm giving you both sides of this because this is where my mindset has been in this whole conversation. And the result that I got to is Joel Quenneville is going to be back in the league. I think he's going to get reinstated at some point, whether he comes in as like an assistant coach and Gary Bettman makes him go through like a program to get back to the NHL, or if he comes back to the NHL as a head coach. I think he's going to be back. And from the Blues perspective, I think from the personal side of it, it seems like it's an area that if you're Joel Quenneville, it might be the best case for you to get back. And on the hockey side of it, I do think Doug Armstrong would look at it and say, this would be a big get for the team to try and help us take that next step. So, again, this is a muddy middle. There's a lot that goes into this one. I don't really know how I feel about it. Like I said, the fan side of me is excited with Joel Quenneville. The hockey and the personal side of it thinks it's disgusting, and I don't really know if you should be back in the league.
We need more time on this. Let's get into this on the other side. T-Bone, I want to get your thoughts on it. I want to hear from our text line as well, 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line. The mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. It's not going to be the last time that we discuss this, I have to imagine. This is something that the Blues, at a minimum, are at least exploring, according to Jeremy Rutherford, is the possibility of bringing Joel Quenneville in as the head coach of the Blues. Worth noting, he would have to get clearance first from the NHL. That has not happened. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think they're going to be announcing that at any point during the NHL's postseason. So if this is the direction that the Blues decide to go, it's going to be a while before we hear anything definitive on who their next head coach will be. So we'll get into that a little bit more on the other side here on BK and Ferrario. All right, so if you missed it, there was a story today over in The Athletic. Jeremy Rutherford did a fantastic job with an update on where the Blues stand right now when it comes to their coaching search. What are they going to do? Who are they going to hire? Which direction are they going to go? We didn't spend any time on it. Maybe this is something we do tomorrow, Alex. But there's also another name in there that's new. The Denver head hockey coach, guy that's having unprecedented levels of success at the University of Denver. He's somebody that, according to JR, that they might be interested in as well. Frankly, that's the direction I would go. I would want to see, hey, can this guy take his talents from the collegiate level to the NHL, which we've seen has worked at other spots, and kind of grow with the young guys that are on this roster right now. Be a part, reach his ceiling as a coach right around the time that the Blues are reaching their ceiling as a team. That would be my preferred route to go in this scenario. Hell, I would prefer to go with Bannister than hiring a guy like Joel Quenneville. But the other name, of course, that he mentioned, Jeremy Rutherford over on The Athletic, that the Blues are at least exploring right now, is Joel Quenneville. Quenneville is trying to get reinstated from the NHL. That's something that, this is my speculation here. I'd be shocked if the NHL decided to do that during the postseason.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Doesn't make any sense. You make up a massive story that'll take place right as your biggest event is in front of millions of viewers. Yeah, I'm not doing that right now. We'll wait until after the Stanley Cup is handed out, and then we'll get to the news with Quenneville one way or the other. So it's going to be a while before the Blues would be able to announce Quenneville as their head coach, if that is truly the path that they would like to go down. Alex, we mentioned this on the other side, our opinions on it. I do want to hear from T-Bone as well. Tanner, when you think about the idea, hear the notion of Quenneville potentially becoming the next head coach here in St. Louis, you are not somebody like Alex who grew up on the late 90s, early 2000s Blues, where you saw Quenneville as the head coach, have a lot of positive experiences with him in behind that bench. For you, somebody that doesn't have that same emotional tie, what would your reaction be if they decided to go down this path?
I think I would be disappointed in the organization as a whole, because I'm with you. I don't think Quenneville should be back in the league, and hearing the excuse of, well, he's going to get back in anyways. No, I think the NHL, all these guys that were involved in this report, I think it is embarrassing that the guy that's running the Winnipeg Jets as the GM is in the National Hockey League. I think all these guys shouldn't be back into the NHL. You should be moving away from the cultures that those guys presented to themselves. And for a Blues organization that has talked about culture being a problem, and your answer is going to be turning to Joel Quenneville, who has this baggage that he has currently, to me, it's just disgusting, if I'm being honest. I would be disappointed as a fan if the St. Louis Blues were to hire Joel Quenneville. I don't think it's the right move. Just speaking from the stuff that's gone on and what happened in Chicago, I don't think he should be back in the league. I don't think the NHL should let him back into the league. And if I'm the Blues, I don't want to bring on that PR nightmare if I'm them. If I'm this team and you're in this retool and you've talked about culture and wanting to improve the culture and talk about improving the grit, I think it's time to go a different direction. Whether you want to stick with Bannister, you want to go out, who knows who gets fired in the playoffs this coming off season. Maybe you want to recycle one of those guys. Maybe you do want to go after one of the young, hot coaches that could be a commodity of the Denver coach that's there at Denver University. The Blues should not steep to a franchise low and go and bring Joel Quenneville back into the NHL. They should not be the team that does it. Frankly, I don't think a team in the NHL should do it.
So we've got a few of these texts, something to this effect. If they hire Quenneville, it's a win-at-all-cost mentality, and I'm just not willing to go that far to win at all costs. That's kind of where I'm at. And I know there's going to be a lot of sports fans that disagree with me, and that's fair. I don't blame you. I'm a Chiefs fan, right? I rooted for the Chiefs. I rooted for Tyreek Hill. It's an uncomfortable position to be in as a fan when that is something that you have to come to terms with. Like Tyreek Hill, there's something horrible in his past. Horrible, despicable, disgusting in every possible way. And yet, as he was scoring touchdowns, I was cheering. And like, how do I reconcile those two things? What I'm watching on the football field where you are bringing me joy, and the despicable acts that you have been accused of in your past. How do I reconcile those two things? It's hard, man. It's really hard. And I hate that sports makes us do it, but it's life, right? Like, you could be in sales, the worst person that you've ever met in your entire life, maybe the top salesperson in your office. And you got to find a way to reconcile, like, how do I associate with this individual? The Blues might hire Joel Quenneville. That is absolutely in play this offseason. And if they do, it's going to be something that I have to reconcile as somebody that is a host on the Blues radio network. Like, man, how do you just keep this totally objective when this is something that's in his history? When one of his coaches, a video staff member, sexually assaulted a black ace under his watch, whether it was his fault or not, set that aside for a second, under his watch as the head coach of that team. How do I just accept that that guy is now the head coach of a team with young men under his watch once again here in St. Louis? The head coach is the guy that like basically sets the culture for the team. That's what we talked about with Berube. It's what we talked about. Like, that's the guy that sets the culture. Is that the culture you want to implement here in St. Louis? Something that I'm going to have to come to terms with, and I'll figure that out for myself, and every Blues fan will have to figure that out for themselves if this is the direction that they go. I just don't think it's necessary. This feels like a desperate move to me. It feels like a move.
I think Doug's in a desperate situation.
And that's where we'll just disagree on this. And it's an interesting thought. Like, in my opinion, the Blues aren't to this place of desperation. If the next head coach didn't work out, I could see how you get yourself there. And if you're in Doug Armstrong's shoes, maybe at that point, we're 3 years down the road, you're hiring another coach. Might be his last opportunity to hire a coach. So I get how in that scenario, you would go down this path, even if I would still disagree with it and think it's not necessary. I think this is something that like a team like Buffalo considers, because we have tried everything and nothing has worked. The last thing that we can do is, hey, this dude was unbelievably successful on the ice. Yeah, we understand there's a lot of stuff that comes along with it. We're willing to answer for all of that. We're comfortable with his answers on it. This is the path we're going down. For my money, I don't think that the Blues are there. I don't think they should be that desperate. I think you've got a core group of players that's coming through that might be good. And I think if you hire the right coach, it can work, man. I really believe that in my heart of hearts. And I just think there's other candidates that have the pedigree to believe that they can make it work here in St. Louis.
I'm with you. And the name, and again, we'll talk about this tomorrow, but the coach with University of Denver, David Carl, like, it's an interesting name that I don't think anybody really thought of, which might put Joel Quenneville on the back burner. The other side of this that I do find really intriguing, which we really won't know until the hiring takes place, if it takes place, is the players' thoughts on it. I've seen a lot of reaction to, like, man, if you're trying to build a culture, do you think a group of players like this that have been so fragile with Craig Berube and now Drew Bannister, you think they're going to listen to Joel Quenneville? And I completely understand that side of it, because, yeah, I have no idea. I mean, these players know about the stories. They've seen all of the pieces out on it. They read the athletic articles just like we read the athletic articles. They know the backstory. If you're Doug Armstrong, does your roster, are they on board with this? Because if they're not, then you can't hire this. But if they are, now you got to figure out kind of the way to step through this one and what the best approach is for the Blues. I don't feel like the Blues are there in the desperate situation that would have to go for Joel Quenneville, but I wonder if the president of hockey operations looks at it and says, this might be my last head coach hire. Because if you're in the retool, and again, we're setting everything aside, we're going the hockey side of this one. If you're in the retool and they're saying they want to compete and you want to do it fast, you have no willingness to go through a rebuild. You got to get you have to make this one a home run hit. And I don't know if Joel Quenneville's a home run hit, but the past hockey side of it, he's gotten the best out of players. And if you're Doug Armstrong, you go down the path of recycling through one of the old head coaches. That doesn't work. Maybe you do go get the young guy. And look, Jim Montgomery coached in college before he got to the NHL, and it worked. David Hackstall coached in the college ranks before he got to the NHL, and it didn't work. That can go one of two ways, but so can Joel Quenneville. It's just a matter of, are you willing to take that blow with this decision? But I do wonder if Doug's in a position right now. I don't think his job's on the line, but I think he realizes we're not going to be able to fire another coach and bring in another head coach 3 years from now.
That is one spot to where, just talking on the hockey side and talking about, I do agree. I think if you hire Quenneville, any organization that if they do it, it is a desperate move. The reason I don't think the Blues are at that spot is I think ownership seems pretty clear in where they view where this team is. Tom Stillman, we played the cut yesterday with your conversation with him, said, we're following Doug's plan. Nothing has changed for this offseason. Well, if you're following Doug's plan, I'm sure Doug knows, hey, we're probably 3 years away from really being a contender. And if that's the case, we don't have to be desperate on this hire. We don't have to try and accelerate this and force ourselves into a PR nightmare with Joel Quenneville. I would think that you're not in that desperate spot. I think there might be some thought to where, do I even get another coaching hire? And honestly, you don't hire a coach to prepare to fire him, but that is the job. I think if you're the St. Louis Blues, you're not at that desperate state just yet because you are in, honestly, year 2 of what is probably a 3 to 4 year retool. You're not at the back end of this retool. There is still some tough times to come for the St. Louis Blues, in my opinion.
I agree with that. And I would also add this. I think a coach in the NHL is as good as his players. I think that's something that we learned with Craig Berube. When you don't have the right guys, you're not going to win. And if Joel Quenneville came here to St. Louis to be the next head coach here, I don't know how much winning he would do compared to any other guy that comes in. Now, the ceiling is really high with him behind the bench. We've seen that. Whether it was what he did in Chicago, what he did here in St. Louis in the late 90s, early 2000s, he's a really good head hockey coach, purely from a hockey sense, or at least he was. The other thing is, man, it's been a minute. It's been a few years since he's been behind that bench, and you don't just lose it. I understand that, but the game has changed in a meaningful way. We've seen that young players are coached a little differently today than they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. And players responded to him prior to all of this coming out. What is the reaction inside of that room now that it has come out? I don't know, man. There's just a lot more questions than there are answers on this kind of a hire. It, to me, is just not something that if I'm in the head of this organization, I would do. I also know that my job's not on the line. I'm not the one that has paychecks that are signed based on the wins and losses for the St. Louis Blues. And so it is much easier for me to say on the outside looking in, don't go down that path, go try something else that's super risky and you've never seen him coach in the NHL. That's easy for me to say, right? As somebody that's a bystander on the outside looking in. It's a little harder to do that when you're the one whose ass is on the line if things do not go well. But I would also say it's hard for me if my butt's on the line to hire Joel Quenneville right now. There's just a lot there, man. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll play a game of Bet It or Forget It. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. But next, we saw the value last night of a legitimate front-end starting pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals. I don't think we've seen a guy like this starting for the Cardinals in, almost 5 years. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Classic Air Care who've been taking care of the Ferrario family for like the last 25 years or something like that. They've been doing the HVAC system maintenance and a new HVAC system at my father's place. They were working on my old house when my wife and I bought it in 2016, and they're still working on our unit at our new house today. And I'm a part of the maintenance program, which Classic Air Care takes care of my HVAC unit. Springtime, fall time, they clean it, they tune it up, they make sure I'm good to go for the next season. And here's the best part about it. They are upfront and honest. And with HVAC systems, you know you're going to have to purchase one at some point if it's old, and that's a lot of money. You want to make sure you're with the company that's straightforward with you, letting you know what you need, what you don't need, what's just that extra money thrown in. Classic Air Care is upfront and honest. And if you don't believe me, check out the hundreds of reviews that they have on their Google review ratings, like this one from Carolyn. Brian was excellent with his service, his politeness, his knowledge. He explained to me what was best for our unit, and we went with it that same day. Customer service at its best. So get with the right people, the people that have been making others comfortable since 1926. It's Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Normally, we'd be doing the junk drawer at 12:45. Today, we had to talk about Joel Quenneville. Wanted to give that the time that it deserved. The junk drawer is brought to you on a typical day by Fenton Bar and Grill. Best trashed wings in Missouri. Dine in, carry out, 7 days a week. Alex, yesterday we saw the value of a front-end starter for the St. Louis Cardinals. Once again, Sonny Gray goes out there with a pitch count, and it didn't matter. He talked after the game. He's like, listen, there was a point in time in my career when I was chasing strikeouts. And I'd go out there and I'm just trying to rack up as many strikeouts as I possibly can. And it didn't allow me to get as deep into games, but I'm a different pitcher now. I'm not doing that as often. But I also know that I have the capability to strike guys out when I need to. So when I need to go out there and get one, I can go out there and do so. But especially right now as he's on a pitch count, he's trying to get quick contact, trying to get light contact, get out of the game without giving up any runs. Well, through 2 games, He has allowed exactly 0 runs so far. Notably, he also has 0 walks. In his 2 starts, both times, he went at least 5 innings, struck out at least 5, did not allow a walk, did not allow a run. So he's done that in 2 of his 2 starts in a Cardinals uniform. Here are the other pitchers since 2020 that have done that multiple times. Again, it's not crazy criteria. 5 innings, 5 strikeouts, 0 walks, 0 runs allowed. Jose Quintana did it in 2 of his 12 starts in a Cardinals uniform. My God, how I miss that man.
He'll be back, buddy. He'll be back.
Miles Michaelis has done that
Game 1 starter.
3 of his 80 starts since 2020. Adam Wainwright did that in 4 of his 95 starts since 2020. Nobody else did that multiple times since 2020.
We are great at finding top talent in the pitching.
Not even Lester, Happ, or LeBlanc could do it.
LeBlanc.
Or that guy, too.
Carlos.
Well, we needed Dakota. Couldn't he walk the world?
Hey! Ace.
Or Gant. Or Ponce.
Oh, Gant was bad.
Alex, the reason I bring this up is because we talked so much in the offseason about the Cardinals' need for a front-end starting pitching. And then there became this conversation about, is Sonny Gray an ace? Is he a number 1? What is Sonny Gray? I don't even know what the classification is at this point. I think with so many aces on the injured list at this point, just by virtue of them not being available, like, eventually you have to say Sonny Gray's a top 10-ish pitcher in Major League Baseball. Right now, that is healthy, available to you.
But he doesn't perform in the playoffs.
And so, like, right now, yeah, he'd probably be on my criteria of being an ace because there's, like, 5 other dudes that I would take over him currently. Alex, what have you seen thus far, and what has it taught you about what the Cardinals are getting from Sonny Gray?
Well, the good and the bad. Like, the good is Sonny Gray is awesome. And, I mean, he's been doing this on pitch counts of 65 and 75. He stayed under his pitch counts both times and still made it 5 and 6 innings without giving up a earned run or a walk. It's incredible. But it's also like they've had to win games 3-0 and 3-1 for Sonny Gray because the offense isn't hitting. But just the Sonny Gray perspective, this is the guy we all talked about. And, like, I wanted Aaron Nola, who has not started off well this season. Surprise, surprise. I wanted a guy that had that ace criteria. And I still don't believe Sonny Gray falls into that for a lot of people. We can say he is, but if you ask anybody around Major League Baseball, they're probably like, nah, not an ace, but he's a top-end starter. Fine. This is a massive building block for the Cardinals because, as you just alluded to, BK, you have not had this guy for a long time. A guy that every 5th day, I know I'm getting 6+ innings. I know he is going to keep me in that ball game. Probably isn't even going to give up a run through the first 4 or 5 innings, and that is my stopper. We talked so much about how this team in the past would go into snowball mode where they had nobody who could stop it and get it back on track. You've got that guy now in Sonny Gray, and if I'm starting game 1 of a playoff series, I feel awesome about Sonny Gray taking that mound.
That's what I talked about when you signed an ace in the offseason, and what we talked about after his first start, whoever that was he took on, I don't even remember. But that's the importance of having an ace on a staff that the Cardinals haven't had. Not only is it he's a stopper, so it wasn't like they were on a losing streak, 2 games isn't nothing, but he can stop that. And the fact of the matter that going into a game that Sonny Gray starts, you're not losing that game because Sonny Gray. If they lost that game last night to the Oakland Athletics because the offense didn't do anything, the offense barely did anything and they won. But it's not because of, oh man, our pitcher went 3 innings, gave up 7 runs. Like, think of the other 4 guys in this rotation: Michaelis, Matthews looked really good, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson. Don't know what you're getting on any night. There might be a night where you need for Kyle Gibson 7 runs from the offense to support him. Maybe you just need 2, but you don't know. For Sonny Gray, 2 to 3 runs is all you're going to need most nights to get a win with him, and that's the important part as an offense. It is no longer of, oh, man, here we go again. We're back at the ballpark again. We're on a 4-game losing streak. We got to go out there and score 6 runs to have a chance to win. No, man, Sonny Gray's getting the ball. He's going to be efficient. He's going to get swing and miss. He's going to get strikeouts. He's going to pitch well. He's going to keep you in the game, and you don't have to score 6 runs to win that baseball game.
You know what the conversation isn't about today? The offense. You know what it should probably be about today?
The offense.
What did they do with runners in scoring position yesterday?
3 for 13 with runners in scoring position last night. They have now scored 3 or fewer runs in 9 of their past 11 games. In those 9 games in which they scored 3 or fewer runs, they are 3-6. 2 of the 3 wins came with Sonny Gray on the mound.
That's how the 2004 offense started, though.
Sure. 13 probably for sure. I'll have to look at the numbers, see how they
Don't
compare.
worry, he'll go back in time.
The reason why I bring this up is because we've only seen 2 Sonny Gray starts. They have scored 3 or fewer runs in both of them.
Woof.
And they won both games.
Yep.
That's the difference, man. There's also a feeling as a team when you are out there in the field and you know Sonny Gray's on the mound today. If we scratch across a few runs, we're getting a win. Ollie talked about that after the game, where he's like, listen, it is a different feel as a player. When you have trust that your starting pitcher is going to get things to the back end of your bullpen, and you know, just need a few. We don't need to be perfect today, just need a few of these things. And that is a feeling that the Cardinals have not had, definitely did not have at any point last year. Really probably didn't have for most of the year, the season prior. I think you got to go back to 2021 Waino. That's probably the last time you felt like you had that. That was the year that Waino started 32 games, ended up having 3 complete games that year, 206 innings, a 3.0 ERA. That's a number 1 starting pitcher that season for the Cardinals. And it's not a surprise. He finished 7th in the Cy Young voting that year. That's the kind of thing that they've been missing. And now they've got it. Yes, they still need a number 2 starter, in my opinion. I don't think they have one on their roster. The closest thing, it's been Steven Matz so far this year, and unfortunately, he had a blow-up inning as well. But his stuff profiles that way. He can get the strikeouts when you need him to. And when he's at his best, get you 6 innings, 1, no earned runs allowed. At least there's a ceiling to get there. The other dudes in their rotation right now just don't have that kind of a ceiling. So you had to sign one. They got one. They ended up getting the right guy, in my opinion. I'm thrilled by what we've seen thus far from Sonny Gray. They just need another one. They just need another one of these dudes, man.
Hey, we got Miles Michaelis, man. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Pitch to contact.
Lance Lynn on the mound today.
Oh,
See what he looks like.
One of these things
Anybody
is not
else
like
have that
the
moment
other.
yesterday? Like, man, that was fun to watch. We
you
got
know-
to watch an ace, and then you looked on your MLB app, and you're like, man, who goes for the Cardinals? Oh, Lance Lynn.
Hey,
Oh.
there's nothing wrong with a little jockstrap adjusting when you walk off the mound. We haven't had that in 4 starts.
So I did want to ask you one other thing, because another positive coming off of yesterday's game. Again, the Cardinals won yesterday. They are 8-9 on the season. Hopefully they can get the series win today, because we know they're ineligible to win in Game 3 of any individual series. So hopefully they get the win today with Lance Lynn on the mound.
Wynn's back's fine. He'll be playing. Game
No, he'll be off Game 3 when it's the rubber match.
Yeah, they got the travel day on Thursday. Want to make sure that thing doesn't flare up prior to getting out on the road. All right.
Alex is going to sit on a plane for a couple of hours.
Alex, I do like the look of this lineup with Lars Nootbaar hitting third. And I like the lineup, honestly, anytime that Lars Nootbaar's in it.
I don't like the lineup when it goes 3 for 13 with runners in scoring
It'll
position.
get better. Alex,
Said that last year.
I remember when Jaden Schwartz was a big part of the Blues.
Yeah, Schwarzschienko.
He was that guy that was almost the bellwether for, hey, Jaden Schwartz in the lineup tonight, they're winning. Jaden Schwartz out of the lineup tonight, they're losing.
Dude, it was like a 40 games above 500 when he played and like 20 games below 500 when he didn't play.
I will never forget how people viewed him as the engine of that team, despite the fact that he was clearly like the 4th or 5th best player on the roster, at best. But he did the things that made everything else work. He was that puck hound, which allowed your top-line players to be able to go out there and play their best. So Jaden Schwartz, super important for those teams because of the role that he played. He was the glue guy for those Blues teams. I think Lars Nootbaar might be becoming that for the St. Louis Cardinals. Because I looked at this earlier today, Alex. Over the past 3 seasons with Lars Nootbaar in the lineup, the Cardinals are 125 and 104. So they're 20 games above 500, a 550 winning percentage. When he is not in the lineup over the past 3 seasons, 22, 23, and the start of this year, they're 47 and 65. So essentially 20 games below 500 when Lars Nootbaar is not out there, a 420 winning percentage. So they're a playoff team with him over the past 3 seasons and one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball when he's not out there. What does that say about what he provides that the Cardinals lack when he's not in the lineup?
Attitude. I think attitude's part of it. I think the bat, he's got the ability to clutch hit, which we're starting to see. The team doesn't really have a lot of those guys. I think there's 2 players on this roster that fall into that Jaden Schwartz criteria, Nootbaar and Brendan Donovan. I think those are the two. I think those are the 2 glue guys that if you pluck them out, because I remember last year when Donovan got injured and he was gone, that team was sub 500 the rest of the way.
Dude, they might as well have waved the white flag whenever he went down under the knife for surgery.
They were like, it's over. They knew it. So I think you've got 2 guys that fall into that category. But Lars Nootbaar, to me, like Donovan's that he'll do anything. He gets the attitude up because of how he plays. Nootbaar's kind of that clutch player for you to where, like, big moments, you know he's going to fall through. He's going to come up with the big hit. He's going to make the play in the outfield. He's going to make the right move on the base paths to where everyone else sees it and says, well, damn, Lars just did that, so now we need to jump in. I mean, he's the pepper grinder guy. So now you've got 2 of those that I think are very impactful to this roster that if you don't have those players, just like Schwartz was, if he wasn't on the ice, nobody was going to retrieve those pucks. If you don't have Donovan and Nootbaar coming up with the clutch plays, nobody else seems to be making those for this team.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that just always consistently is providing a spark, because even when they were bad last year, you'd get the pepper grinder from Lars Nootbaar. He's always smiling. Every time you see a video of him in the dugout, he's always got a smile on his face and he's talking with the guys. And when you see Arenado sometimes, when he doesn't have good at-bats, you can just feel the frustration. You can see he's frustrated. Don't really get that from Newt, and that's not a shot against Arenado, but I don't ever see that from Lars Nootbaar.
I mean, his body language could be better.
Yes.
What?
Yes. But Lars Nootbaar doesn't have that. He is kind of a spark for the Cardinals lineup, and he does a little bit of everything. He plays great defense. He does have a little pop. He's not a 30 home run guy, but he can hit 20 home runs. He also just provides competitive at bat. That's why I think Donovan fell in this category for me. Him and Donovan are like the same guy, in my opinion. Donovan just a little bit better at getting on base from Nootbaar, but they both provide pop. They're both going to give you a competitive at-bat. They can hit for average. They'll get on base, and they can slug. That's the dream if you're the St. Louis Cardinals for your left-handed bats that you're going to have at 1 and in 3.
Yep. I like what it looks like right now with those two guys up there. They've got to figure out this number 2 hole situation, man. Nolan Arenado, you're starting to see him hit the ball hard again. It's really encouraging signs that are taking place with him at the plate over the last 4 games. He has like 9 hard hit balls. That's something entirely different than what we saw from him in the first 12 games of the regular season. Goldie still just looks lost. Like, there's just nothing for me to latch on to right now, similar to what it was a few days ago with Arenado. They really need Goldie to get going, guys. It's got to happen sooner rather than later. Otherwise, they're going to have to move him in the order. Like, there's going to come a certain point in time where you just cannot putting this dude, you can't keep putting that guy that high up in the order when you have so many on-base percentage opportunities with Brendan Donovan and then a guy coming up behind him where you're going to have 1 out and Lars Nootbaar's coming up with 1 on. Should potentially be 2 on, no outs, Nootbaar coming up to the plate. You're wasting those opportunities right now with Paul Goldschmidt. I think I would flip him and Contreras, honestly, and just see what that looks like. It's 2 versus 5. It's not a huge deal. I know that's probably going to hurt some feelings, but at some point you got to make the change.
I know his back hurts, but Masyn Winn would look good in the 2 hole these days, too.
I would actually like that.
I know.
See what it looks like.
But his back hurts, so we can't. We got to make sure that we're arresting him.
And Jordan Walker's got to start hitting. His
back probably hurts, too.
That's his hip. It's leaking.
Should probably close that hole up.
He's batting 188.
It hit yesterday.
Send him down. Send him down.
Relax. We're getting there.
Coming up next, Better to Forget It here on 101 ESPN. I got to tell you about my friends over at Victory Men's Health. You can check them out at one of their 4 great locations across the St. Louis Metro. They've got them in O'Fallon, Missouri, O'Fallon, Illinois, Town and Country, and the newest location, which just opened up about a month and a half ago now, out in Sunset Hills, Missouri. Maybe you've gone to one of these types of places before, a low T spot. You walk in the door. It's like, ooh, feel like I'm in a hospital right now. That is not the feel. That's not the vibe when you go over to Victory Men's Health, because they are there to unlock your inner champion today. You walk through, it looks brand new. It is absolutely beautiful. Leather furniture all over the place. They are there to make you feel your best. And that's how I feel whenever I walk through the door over at Victory Men's Health, whether it's getting help with erectile dysfunction, whether it's some vitamin deficiencies. Maybe you feel like you may be suffering from low testosterone. Go over there, get that micronutrient testing that done for you. See what it is specifically that they can do to help you out. They're going to unlock your inner champion. Again, they've got 4 great locations at Victory Men's Health across the St. Louis metro area, and you can check out everything that they do over at victorymenshealth.com.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Sad day in St. Louis as the Hall of Fame Cardinals manager Whitey Herzog passed away this morning at the age of 92. Today on BK and Ferrario, we had the chance to catch up with Baseball Hall of Famer George Brett, who played for Whitey in Kansas City, and we also caught up with the former Major League Baseball manager and player Clint, who played with Whitey in Kansas City and in St. Louis. And if you missed any of those interviews, you can check those out on the podcast page at 101ESPN.com. Cardinals will be back in action later tonight. 8:40 will be first pitch against the Oakland Athletics. J.P. Sears gets a start for the A's. Lance Lynn will be on the mound for the St. Louis Cardinals. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Ooh, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You give us the scenario. We'll tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here in BK and Ferrario. Alex, I mentioned this during our Circa live read. Circa has officially released their NFL draft over-unders.
Yeah?
I love these. These are some of my favorite things to do. For J.J. McCarthy, I'm going to just get a few of these. We'll do quick hitters. Bet it or forget it, J.J. McCarthy goes before the 6th overall pick in this year's draft.
Bet that. Third or fifth.
5.5 is what his over-under is.
Third or fifth, that's where he's going. Arizona's taking Marvin Harrison Jr., but third or fifth is taking McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm going to bet this as well. I think somebody trades up and gets him at 5.
I think somebody trades up to 4 to get him. I think Arizona trades down. I could see the Giants trading up from 6 to 4. That was something that took place earlier today in Peter Schrager's mock.
As long as my Raiders stick with Penix Jr. or
Better
Dallas.
to forget it. At least one of Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix will go in the first round. Their over-unders are both set at 32.5, which would mean will they go in the first round is essentially a yes or no question there.
I bet it. I think Penix Jr. is going to go somewhere between 15 and 25.
Forget it. I'm not buying the buzz on these two. This feels a lot like in previous drafts where there's always just 7 quarterbacks to go in the first round and then 1 goes. I think you're going to see 4 this year. I think Penix and Nix drop to the second.
I'm going to bet it. I think one of them do. I think somebody could move up. If they don't end up going in the top 15 or so, we mentioned the other day, Dallas is a really interesting spot as a potential landing place. If Minnesota is not able to trade up for one of their guys, I could see them taking whoever remains out of those two at 24. And then one other thing that could happen in this is maybe you see somebody trade into that 29 to 32 range to get that 5th-year option on one of these 2 quarterbacks. Last one, better to forget it, Brock Bowers will go before the 12th overall selection. Jets are 10th, Minnesota 11, Chicago at 9.
I'm going to bet this one. I could see the Jets doing this. I could see Aaron Rodgers being like, I need a tight end. And they go draft Brock Bowers, and then it just implodes in front of them. So, yeah, I'll bet that one.
Oh, man. I'll bet it, but I don't feel confident in saying I'm going to bet it.
I'm going to bet it as well. I think it'll be a mistake. I don't think that it'll end up working out in the first couple of seasons the way that people expect it to. I think Brock Bowers is a really good football player and will eventually reach maybe not a ceiling, but he'll get to like 800 yards regularly. I don't know that that's worth a top 10 pick, though, at tight end. And I don't think he's going to be much of a blocker. So wouldn't you just rather have the wide receiver? Like Rome Odunze versus Brock Bowers. Who would you rather have? Probably Rome. The ceiling of Brian Thomas Jr., LSU wide receiver. I'd rather have potentially that than a guy that's going to get 600, 700, 800 yards first few seasons as a tight end. So I'm going to bet it. I think he goes early. I think it's going to be a mistake. Alex?
Guys, I got a non-sports one if that's okay.
Please.
It's a free space here. Guys, bet it or forget it. Trampolines aren't fun anymore.
I'll bet it.
What?
When I was young, I had a trampoline. And I was bouncing, have the best time ever, right? And then my leg got caught on the side, between the springs.
Yeah.
And
That's
we were like,
awesome.
We were all horse playing around, whatever. We got like 6 guys up on the trampoline. Leg gets caught, and I fall backwards. And so my leg just like snaps like that. Hyperextended my knee. It was a whole thing.
They didn't properly set your trampoline up then, man. You're supposed to protect from that.
Yeah, well, this is before we had those.
Oh, yeah, this was
like
when,
2005.
This is when we were
like
ballers,
12.
where it was just a metal trampoline with no net. It was jump on it at your own risk.
Yeah.
I was on this last night with my daughters, and, my kids are 3 and 2 years old, so they just run around in circles. And so I was like, oh, this will be fun. And so I had them sit down on their butts, and I did that little butt bomb to bounce them in the air.
Popcorn.
The fear on my 2-year-old's face was, Daddy might have just killed me. And I looked at her and I said, trampolines aren't fun anymore, are they? And they go, no. And I go, okay, cool. This was fun. So.
I disagree. Forget that. I'd still jump around on a trampoline.
Also, I must be old because while I was bouncing, I was like, man, I could probably vomit right now.
Oh, really?
Motion
sickness.
sickness.
You are old.
Yeah. So trampolines aren't fun anymore, kids.
As we have learned in the last 24 hours from me and T-Bone, you don't do particularly well with motion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
On roller coasters.
That might be a story for another day on the junk drawer.
Probably.
You may not want to bring that one
T-Bone?
up.
We just won't mention her name.
Yeah. Or tell the story.
Deep tease.
Roller coasters, Alex, Six Flags, not a great combination.
Date gone wrong. Chicken nuggets everywhere.
T-Bone?
On her.
Guys, bet it or forget it. By the end of the next homestand, we will see Michael Ciani as the starting center fielder for the St. Louis Cardinals.
I think they're going to have to make this decision sooner rather than later. And by the end of the next homestand, you said?
Yeah, so a week from tomorrow.
I'm going to say bet it. I don't know how much longer you can go with Victor Scott as your starting center fielder, man. He's batting below 100. He's getting on base at a $150 clip. I think we've got to start seeing him try to bunt more often. That's got to be the next step for him. And I know that could create some bad habits, but hey, man, there's nothing that's being created that's a good habit right now. He's been stuck on 6 runs scored for a while. I'm betting this.
Yeah, I still don't agree with it, but it's hard for me to deny it when you look at how much he's struggling. So, yeah, I think I'm going to bet this one. I don't know the update with Carlson and Edman.
It's going to be a while.
Yeah, so I think that's going to have to be it.
Hitting off of a tee.
My wonder is if they put Nootbaar in center for a little bit and then defensively replace him later in the game, but Yeah, I'm going to bet this one.
I actually would. If the offense started hitting, forget this. I think it just comes down to the offense, man. If the offense hit, you can run Victor Scott out there. Because I actually don't. There was one at bat yesterday against a reliever where he looked really overpowered. Yeah. Outside of that, though, I still feel like the approach is good. It's just not leading to results. It's clear he's whatever. He's outmatched on fastballs up in the zone. I forgot the word. And he's bad against breaking balls low in the zone. But even then, the approach still looks okay, in my opinion. That I think if the offense as a whole starts to hit, they can continue to run him out there until one of Carlson or Edmund is back.
All right, let's get to a few of your texts before we get to the rewind and your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for Cardinals versus Diamondbacks. This one comes from the 479. Guys, bet it or forget it. BK will admit before the end of the season that Ollie actually isn't a good manager. Forget it. Not happening.
Man, we got close to it a couple days ago, and then look how much you backtracked after the Masyn Winn comments where it was like, oh, no, this is fine. He just needs to be more upfront about it.
Bet it or forget it. The Brewers and Cubs are better than we thought. T-Bone is all in on this. Churios.
Dude, that
dude is awesome.
Unlike our right fielder, am I right?
Hey, he'll get there.
I'm sorry, Jordan.
That was mean, man.
But that hip, that hip don't lie, man. Keeps leaking, and I don't know what's wrong. Bet it.
Bet it or forget it. The Blues' next head coach is currently preparing his team for the playoffs.
Forget it.
Because not making the playoffs, so forget it.
I think their next coach could be somebody who's not doing that or just won a championship. That's the David Carl. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Guys, bet it or forget it. 314
Rod the Bod.
399.
I would love Rod the Bod or Sheldon Keefe. That's the other one I like.
Is the Air Comfort Service text line. Bet it or forget it. Jake Neighbors will be the next captain of the Blues.
Bet it.
I mean, bet it, but man, yeah, I guess bet it. Part of me really, I think it's going to be Thomas. I mean, if you got a guy who's in the Selke Trophy conversation, I think it could be Thomas, but I'm going to play the odds here and go with bet it because of the type of person Jake Neighbors is.
Yeah. He's just so well spoken.
Yeah, it's so hard to deny that.
I totally
or Brady Tkachuk.
Maybe, but I was gonna say he lived with Braden Shen.
Yeah,
so he saw Shen when he was coming up and how Shen operates. I just think it's Jake Neighbors. I don't know how you could not give him the captaincy as of today if you were to give it to somebody else.
Bet it as well. Better to forget it. Last one here. The Cardinals should consider bringing back Jeff Albert.
He ain't coming back. The city made him cry.
I'm forgetting it, and I think it is once again a reminder that it's the players, guys. It is the players. I think a good hitting coach can absolutely help. I think a bad hitting coach can expose your lack of talent in your lineup. I think most of them are somewhere in the middle. Most of these guys have a job for a reason. And the reason why they have their jobs, they're pretty good at it. They've got some tips that can be helpful for players. I think what you're seeing with the Cardinals is that Arenado was off, and he needed some help to get his swing back on track. And he has now. It appears he's back on track. Goldie is a shell of himself right now. Walker has some mechanical issues, and that takes time, guys. It takes time. And it takes working, and they're doing that, but at a certain point, it's got to click. I think some of what we're seeing offensively right now is just there wasn't enough dudes, and hopefully that will get corrected as they now have Lars Newbar back into the lineup. But no, I don't think it's because Jeff Albert was gone.
No, I'm betting. I miss all the Albert talk on the text line.
It's funny how some call the media soft in St. Louis, but Jeff Albert left because, we were too mean to him.
I don't think it was us. I think it was the text line.
Well, the text line, hey, Jeff, if you're listening, buddy.
I said Jeff was. Well,
text line makes me feel like that too sometimes.
I say Jeff was good at minor league development, major league.
Well, I'm not sure some of those minor league guys.
I think he did a fine job.
Some of those minor league guys don't look too good right now.
Coming up next,
Jeff.
We'll give you a chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for Cardinals versus Diamondbacks, and we'll hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about Rhino Shield. You might be like me when it comes to the exterior of your home. You're thinking, man, I need a new look, but I don't want to pay the money. I'm just going to do this myself. I'll paint it. I'll buy the paint from the hardware store, and we'll be good to go. Problem is, every year you're going to be doing the exact same thing because that paint you're buying over the counter at hardware stores, it's not the same strength like Rhino Shield. Rhino Shield uses a 2 to 3 coating process that sticks to the exterior of your home, and whatever exterior you have, whether it's brick, block, aluminum, stucco, maybe it's asbestos siding, all of that Rhino Shield sticks to, but their product can withstand whatever elements. It's backed by 100% waterproof. It's got 90% deflection of the UV rays. It comes with a 25-year transferable warranty because they're so confident in their product that it will last you the time you are in your home, and it changes the look. It looks brand new. I can speak to this because did this 3 years ago. My house looks the same as it did when Darren and his team painted it. So give him a call today. Tell Darren I sent you to update the exterior of your home, your business, someone else's home that you know. Give them the coating of a Rhino. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25rhino.com.
you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
When you go over there, you will hear our interviews with George Brett, Baseball Hall of Famer, where we were able to remember the life, the legacy, and the experiences that George Brett had playing for Whitey Herzog. We also talked to Clint, who was influenced heavily as a manager from his experiences as a player with Whitey Herzog as well. So you'll hear those full interviews and our conversation with Jeremy Rutherford about the Blues coaching search, where that could lead. All of that, again, available on the podcast page or on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Coming up here in just a moment, I'll give you a chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for the Cardinals versus the Diamondbacks. So have your phones ready for the text. That's coming up here in just a second. Alex, Cardinals back in action tonight. Lance Lynn on the mound going up against Sears, the Oakland really good pitcher, going to be on the mounds today. I will be fascinated to see how Ollie navigates the lineup. Going up against a lefty starter for the first time in a while, you should see both Ivan Herrera and Wilson Contreras in the lineup. How do you think he goes about this? I do wonder what that means for Victor Scott as well in center field. You might see something different there.
I think that might be a Siani start out there. Does that mean Nolan Gorman's out? I wouldn't, because I actually would like to see if Gorman can go up against the lefties, and I'd keep him in the lineup there. I kind of feel like I would just go business as usual, with the exception of having Herrera and Contreras in the lineup. And if you don't want Scott in there because he's looked overmatched and because it's lefty on lefty, then I think you just throw Michael Siani in there.
Yeah, I think it's going to look a lot the same as yesterday. I think you're going to see Donovan 1, Goldie 2. I think they'll go Newt 3, Arenado 4, and then what they'll probably do is Contreras 5, 6 will be Herrera as the DH is my guess.
You keep Walker in though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be in there. Yeah.
I think he's going to play every day for a little while to see where he's at.
So, but if you're doing
back on track,
so if you're doing that though, then who's the outfielder? Newt Barr would be your center fielder.
No, he'd be.
You're sticking with Scott.
If you're
actually, I have no.
Yeah, because Donovan's playing. You got Herrera as your DH.
My guess is,
Newt Barr in
they
center.
Take Scott out tonight. Lefty going up against a lefty. I think this is the night.
So do you play Newton center?
Probably.
And then Walker and Donovan?
You got Lance Lynn on the mound, who's a bit of a fly ball pitcher, as we know. So
it's a big ballpark.
A bit of a.
What could go wrong?
All right, texter number 24-314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you are texter number 24 right now, you can tell us what Whitey Herzog's nickname was. What was Whitey Herzog's nickname? Texture number 24, you're getting the 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for Cardinals versus the Diamondbacks. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We will have Terry Pendleton on the show tomorrow. We will have Craig Berube on the show tomorrow. We'll talk to you guys then. Fastlane coming up next.